The unknown asks whether the man knew that they take 8 gold pieces for medicinal herbs, whether this is robbery. At that time, the unknown monster was in the forest. There was also a man walking there whose clothes were very shabby. It was the main character. He said that it was still so cold, after which he exclaimed about what he had found while he was holding a medicinal herb in his hands. He was a little boy. After that, he looked at his basket with the collected herbs and, having calculated in his mind, said that it was about 2 copper coins worth, but he would like more. The protagonist looked up at the sky and sighed. He was about 6 years old and all he remembers is playing games. After that, he thought that he needed to collect a little more. Now he himself is as if he was a character from an RPG game. The action moves back 6 years. The main character opened his eyes and saw an incomprehensible ceiling in front of him that was not like his own. He wondered what kind of place this was, what time it was. He was late. Perhaps this was the sad fate of all office workers, but the first thing he thought of was the company. The main character tried to move, but his body did not move. He wondered what was going on and he could not even speak. After a few seconds, he managed to lift the pen up. It was very small and shaking. He wondered if it was really his hand, and it looked like a child's hand. He didn't understand what was wrong with him, what was happening at all. He was in a panic. Then he heard someone say that the baby was hardly crying this time. The second voice agreed with him and said that he was really so calm. Then a man appeared in front of his face and said that he wanted to look at him. The protagonist did not understand a word he said. This man did not look modern and moreover was not Japanese, but when he took him in his arms it became clear to him. He was his father. The boy realized that he had been reborn in another world. He was a 30-year-old lonely worker who had been given a new life and a new name, the aristocrat Arad. After that, the action returned to the present. The boy was walking through the forest and thinking about what kind of aristocracy this is, where a 6-year-old child is forced to work. Then he thought about how the side branch of his family was poor after all. The life of luxury remained just a dream. It was obvious that he felt sad at these thoughts. Even his father, Ryan Lee Veer, has a side job. The protagonist exhaled heavily. He immediately remembered that the man made paper umbrellas. Rebirth is not an easy thing. There are things he has learned in the 6 years he has lived in this world. He has always wondered why the characters in reincarnation novels do not want to return to the previous world. However, it is obvious that newborns do not understand this question so easily. It is worth starting with the fact that life in another world is itself a problem with an asterisk. The protagonist himself was often on the verge of losing. It took him years to become an ordinary person in the new world. When he was little, he was fed baby food, and in those moments he thought that he wanted normal food. And now Arad understands that there is no sudden need to go to work. He held the basket of herbs in his hands and thought about the warmth coming from it. Here he doesn't work extra hours that he won't get paid for. It's hard to believe that he can come home from work before the sun sets. He wondered if this was what a quiet life after retirement looked like. It was all so peaceful. Then he heard a strange noise and wondered what that rumble was. The protagonist decided to follow this sound. As it turned out, the bear attacked a group of people. The latter actively fought back. At the moment when the bear decided to attack one of them, this man jumped into the air, then turned to his comrade and told him to start acting. The other man used the fireball skill. The main character, watching all this from the clearing, thought that this was magic. He was seeing this for the first time. It was very cool. At this time, unknown people were rejoicing at their victory over the beast. One of them said that his friend was a good boy, to which the second replied that they had succeeded, it was all his magic, he would like the same, to which the blonde replied that it was all because of luck. They decided that they would hope for next year, and now they had to go back to the guild. They decided that they would definitely get drunk today, then they jumped into the carriage and sped away. The protagonist was shocked by what he saw. Magic was interesting to him because not everyone in this world can use it. In order to be able to use it, you need to receive a divine revelation. Divine revelation is a ceremony on every birthday where a person thanks God for being born. If he is lucky, magic will awaken in him. In general, this is magic that can fall out once a year, a kind of gacha in reality. In addition, it cannot be bought. It often happens that it cannot be knocked out in your entire life. The main character is unlucky for the 6th time in a row. At this moment, he saw a magic ball. The protagonist came closer to it. At the same time, his eyes were shining in anticipation. He did not know what to do with it, so he reached out with both hands to take it. After Arad took this ball in his hands, it immediately disappeared. The boy asked what it was, why it disappeared as soon as he touched it. He thought that it was beautiful. After that, he decided to go home. When he came back, he said that he was home. Mom told him that she welcomed him. The woman said that he was probably tired and then asked him if he was hurt anywhere. To which the protagonist replied that everything was fine, he had earned 4 coppers today. At that moment, they heard a noise and turned to look at him. It was Robin who said that he was back. The woman asked him if he had been drinking. The guy answered yes and said that Kevin had invited him to Carriff Street. The guy also asked if she knew that he was the most important person there. He also added that having such connections is generally useful. To which Mama stutteringly agreed with him and told him to continue in the same spirit. Robin said that he had already eaten, so they could not expect him for dinner. After that, humming a song to himself, he went to his room. The protagonist sighed heavily at that moment. At that moment, his name was called. Mom told him not to sigh like that. Robin is the eldest son, which means the next head of the family. It is important for him to have such acquaintances. To which the boy answered with a smile that he understood everything. Inheritance is important for aristocrats, even for poor families like them. Moreover, due to poverty, all family resources will be concentrated in one, the eldest son. In short, the eldest son is raised by the whole family, from parents to the youngest. There's nothing you can do about it, it's the order of things here. So the main character won't go against it. But he won't let things slide either. In this world, everything comes back to a person like a boomerang, so Arad decided that he would leave home himself, even with only 4 copper coins. This boy was determined. After that, the main character spent his days rushing between the forest and the house. He collected medicinal herbs in the forest, which is no worse than a garden. Every day he exchanged them for coins, and sometimes in the depths of the forest he noticed hunters who were sent there by the guild. They hunted there with the help of magic. Occasionally, the same light would appear next to the magician. He began to call it a trace of magical power. At the same time, the magicians who used it would suffocate very badly after using their powers. The main character always approached such balls. He thought that there was no source of light, but it still came from there. It was a mysterious light that disappeared from touch. A few months later, the protagonist put his hand to his forehead and exclaimed in delight. That day had suddenly arrived. The boy and his family were standing on a slope looking at the house. He said that it was so big. To which he was asked if this was the first time he had seen the main house. He was asked to tone down his admiration and not to disgrace it. People were talking about how this year everything was bigger than usual. Others were talking about how it was the birthday of the head of the family's eldest son. He looked at the line and wondered if they were all standing there just to meet the child. The main character thought to himself that this is what kind of celebrations the nobility has. It is very chic. At the same time, there was food in his hands as well as in his mouth. The main character thought that he couldn't find such tastes at home. He missed it. He couldn't stop eating. At that moment his father called him by name. He began to wipe his mouth with a handkerchief and told him not to be such a glutton. After that, the man turned to both his sons and told them to come to him. After some time, they all knelt before the Lord and said that it was a great honor for them to see him, to which the latter asked his father if he was by any chance Ver. The protagonist realized that this man was the head of the entire large family of aristocrats. His father at that moment responded positively and thanked him for inviting them this year. He introduced his eldest son Robin, then called him by name. It was obvious that the boy was nervous, but he immediately responded to his name. Brother said that his name was Robin Lee Veer. Arad thought to himself that he spoke poorly. Milord at that moment told the guy to be more diligent, so as not to tarnish the family name. Brother agreed. The father asked Robin if it wasn't great, to which the latter replied that he had received instructions from the head of the family himself, with a blush appearing on his face. The protagonist thought about how he hadn't even been introduced. Then he looked at his brother and thought about why he was happy about such a cliched phrase. After that, he turned towards the head of the family and thought that it was understandable why Robin was shaking so much. The man looked scary. After some time, they went outside. Different fireworks were launched into the sky. The whole crowd was jubilant and watched it carefully. The main character was also shocked because the fireworks were magical. Then an unknown voice began to speak for the ladies and gentlemen of the entire court to look at the best magicians of the family and watch the amazing imitations of battle. 6 people appeared on the field. People started talking about how you don't see a mage battle every day. Someone started asking if Master Irma was present. She is the greatest aristocrat of today. After that, the protagonist noticed something. At that moment, Robin called out to him and asked him what he was staring at because there was a battle going on behind them. To which Arad pointed his finger in front of him at the magic balls and said that he was looking at those traces of magic. He explained that after using magic, such glowing things remain. He does not know why he says this. At his words, the brother scratched his head and asked what he meant and what glowing things he was talking about. The protagonist asked him again. The boy pointed towards these objects again and said that there was light there. Robin asked him again where he saw it. Arad pointed his finger in the direction, but the boy continued to say that there was nothing glowing there. The main character was upset because he saw them. He tried to argue with his brother, to which the latter again said that there was nothing here. Robin asked Arad if he had slept poorly today, after which he asked him not to talk nonsense. They were at the Lord's celebration, so he should behave normally and not disgrace him. The latter realized that traces of magic were not visible to anyone. Here the main character caught sight of the maid and, apologizing, asked her to come over for a minute. She agreed, after which she asked what had happened. The boy pointed to the traces of magic again and asked if she saw anything there. The girl was taken aback by this question. She apologized to the main character and said that she didn't quite understand what he was talking about, to which the boy said that he understood everything and then apologized to her. The protagonist put his hand to his mouth and thought about how there were a lot of traces of magic here, but no one was paying attention to them. And then it dawned on him that he was the only one who could see them. Then he felt movement behind him, so he turned around. The crowd asked who this girl was. Others said that she was a daughter of the Louis family who were on good terms with Sir Burton. After this, one of the men turned to the girl, calling her Arya, and asked her to show them all, to which the latter smiled at him and agreed with him, calling him uncle. All the people around, including the members of the milord's family, the milord himself, the main character, were watching the girl attentively, who folded her hands in front of her and began to read the spell. Continuing to speak in an incomprehensible language, she raised her hand upward, after which a fireball burst out of her palm and headed upward. And then she curtsied and thanked everyone for their attention. Arad looked at her with wide eyes and thought that this was very amazing. He thought about how such things happen. Besides the fact that she was born an aristocrat, she also has magic. She won 2 lotteries at once. After this, the main character looked up in front of him. He saw another magic ball there, after which he grabbed it with his hands and pulled it towards himself. Here it was as if the words of a spell began to flash through his head. The fragment of the fireball reached its peak. The mastery was completed. The protagonist stepped back. He was really scared of this situation. He exclaimed about what just happened. The boy began to tap his ear and wondered if he had really imagined it. Then he finally thought about the fact that it had definitely been real. He remembered the words he had heard again. The fireball fragment had reached its peak. Mastery had been achieved. At the same time, he saw symbols in a language unknown to him. The protagonist looked at his palm and thought about what had happened. After that, he turned his gaze to a lonely tree and came closer to it. At this moment, the members of the milord's family were also watching him. After that, Arad put his hand in front of him. He closed his eyes and began to think about releasing a fireball from his palm. He concentrated, then opened his eyes and directed the formed ball at the tree. At this time, the rest of the people saw that the tree had suddenly fallen. They started shouting about it, then wondering what the cause was, whether it was a lightning strike. Then they saw that it had even been torn out by the roots. The blonde guy in the headdress said that it wasn't lightning, it was magic. Others started asking what he was saying, who did it. After that, the guy pointed towards the main character and said that it was that boy who launched the fireball. The latter stood in shock. He looked at his hands. It was hard for him to believe that he had actually mastered magic. The main character thought that it was so cool, he just got goosebumps. He doesn't know what it is, maybe endorphin or dopamine jumped, but everything in his brain seemed to move. The boy thought that this was all very surprising. He was not used to this feeling after using magic. Face blushed, thinking that this could only be experienced in this world. It was clear that he was very happy about it, but he was still a little worried. His hands were shaking. He thought that for the first time in 6 years since his reincarnation, he was so excited. After that, the main character looked around. He looked at the tree again and thought that shooting around was a little dangerous. So he decided that he needed to try to raise his hand up. After that, he concentrated and decided to release a magical charge into the sky. He succeeded. The protagonist thought about how difficult it was to control her. He wondered if others had been in a similar situation. He was a little nervous about it. After the boy turned around, he saw other people watching him. They were talking about how he had mastered magic at such a young age and also used it twice in such a short time. He was surprised by the words twice. At that moment, Arad seemed to stagger. He wondered if this was really called mana. Magic is used according to mana, and if there is little of it, it feels like anemia. The protagonist thought that his head was spinning. He used to play as a mage in RPG games and often squeezed all the juices out of them. He thought about what had happened. People kept saying that he had a lot of magic power for such a young boy. He was a blood relative of the Earl, so it was only natural, as expected from someone with blue blood. They also said that otherwise this would not even be possible. It was amazing, he should continue in the same spirit. At this time, the family of the Lord thought that here it is, the faith in the pedigree. People are stupid, no one has anything to do with it. Ordinary people like to believe that there is a special reason for everything special. Irma said that if it was true, then this boy was truly amazing. If the child released fireballs with such force, he would be bedridden for 3 days. At the same time, people continued to clap and cheer the main character. He smiled sweetly and thought that he had never been so flattered, even before his reincarnation. At that moment, he heard an unknown voice that told him that he could also use magic. The protagonist turned around and saw Arya in front of him. The girl smiled sweetly at him and said that her name was Arya Grace Lewis, after which she asked his name. To which the main character replied that his name was Arad Senvir. Arya said that it was the first time she saw a child who had the same magic as her. The girl extended her hand to him and asked if they would be friends, to which the boy smiled and extended his hand back and said yes. The protagonist thought that it seemed like he was holding a girl's hand for the first time in this world. The latter approached him at that moment, which surprised him greatly. Arya said in an irritated tone that she would never lose to him, and then moved away from him, but she had a sweet smile on her face. The boy's hand began to shake from fear. At that moment, the milord also approached him, who chuckled in surprise and said that he was Vera's son. The protagonist stuttered and answered yes. Count Burton asked why he hadn't told him he had magic the last time they met. To which the boy scratched his head and said that he didn't ask him. He thought to himself that at that moment he still didn't know how to use it, and no one except him had seen fragments of magic. At that moment, the count looked at him very seriously. The protagonist realized that it was impolite to look away. He needed to learn proper etiquette of the aristocracy from Ryan. Count Burton said that Arad was very funny. He continued to look into his eyes, not being afraid of his gaze, to which the boy responded with gratitude for these words. After this, the count turned around and asked if the protagonist's father was here, to which the man, bowing low on the ground, said that he was here. Burton put his hand to his forehead to figure out where the man was. He kept asking about where he was. The protagonist at that moment thought that his father was behind him. The count said that he had a good son. He was silent and listened while his elders were talking. Usually children are not like that, to which the father asked him for forgiveness. At that moment, Arad was thinking that he was already over 30. Earl Burton said that he would contact him again, so he should wait, then turned and walked away. The father of the family responded with an affirmative, indicating that he had heard him. Arya turned to the main character and with a sweet smile said that they would see each other again, and then wished him all the best. The crowd around was in shock. They couldn't believe what had just happened. Everyone started talking about how Arad had won the count's favor. The father called the protagonist by name and said that it had turned out well. The latter turned to the man and hesitantly agreed with him. The boy thought to himself that he was indeed an aristocrat. Their house was so poor that he did not even feel it. At this time, his brother stood in the crowd and was angry at the situation. A few days later, the main character found himself in the forest again. He was collecting various herbs and mushrooms there. Here, not far from him, he saw a rabbit. Arad licked his lips and thought that although the animal was cautious, it still did not run away. Apparently, it thought that he was just a child, which is why it was so inattentive. The protagonist looked at the rabbit and thought that people don't hunt them in the mountains. That's why the animal is now extremely vulnerable. After this, the boy created a small fireball in his hand, after which, thinking that he should act very carefully, the main thing is not to attack openly, he threw it towards the rabbit. His blow hit the target. This blow was not so strong, but it was enough to throw the rabbit aside, after which it stopped showing signs of life. The main character said with a joyful look that he had failed it. He was glad that he had succeeded. With magic, he could now not only gather but also hunt. After that, he saw that near the rabbit there was the same magic ball that he usually collected. He was surprised by this fact. The protagonist thought about the fact that this ball does not disappear. Is it because it is a fragment of his own magic, or is it because he has already learned to throw a fireball? The boy looked around and thought that he needed to search some more. After that, he went on to wander through the forest. The main character looked into every bush. In the next one, he saw another such fragment. After that, he looked around. Arad thought that it looked like wind magic. It didn't leave any marks or burns. At least it didn't look like fire magic. Hoping for that, he reached his hand towards the ball. After he touched it, it shattered into small pieces. He gasped, his face turning a little red. The main character thought that everything was fine. If this was new magic, it seemed to him that he would be able to learn it. After some time, the boy returned to the city. He walked along the road and sang different songs. After that, he turned to the man and asked if he could talk to him, to which the man responded with consent and asked if he was really helping his mother. The main character pulled the body of a rabbit out of his bag and asked if he could sell it. He looked very interested. The man looked closely at the rabbit placed on the display case, then said that this was a mountain rabbit, and then asked if he had really managed to do it himself. Then the merchant took the carcass in his hands and began to examine it. He noticed that there was no blood flowing and it was quite fresh. He asked how Arad had managed to get it. The latter hesitated with an answer to the question. The main character told him about magic, after which the man exclaimed in surprise and said that he was a great guy. To which the boy put his hands in front of him and said that his hands were the most ordinary. The merchant said that he, an old man, had achieved nothing in 40 years. But the guy was lucky, he had received such power of the gods. Then Arad laughed and asked what he had decided about the meat. The man said that he didn't know, and then asked if he could bring it to him regularly, to which the boy Milo smiled and said that he thought he could do it. Then the seller smiled broadly at him and said that he had a great attitude, and you shouldn't expect anything else from a magician. The man gave him a bag of coins and said that it was for him, and if he brings it often, he will add more coins, to which the boy thanked him. The merchant said goodbye to him and told him to be careful on the way home. Arad looked at how much he was paid. He was surprised, because it was the same as for the herbs he would have spent the whole day collecting. The boy thought that he couldn't believe he had earned so much. This wasn't a salary increase, it was all thanks to magic. With its help, every step would become bigger than the previous one. The protagonist put his hand in front of him, looked at it and thought that this was magic. After that, he looked back at the coins he had received. He thought that the more magic he used, the better he would live in this world. Although it was a strange life hack, first, he decided to look for fragments. The main character thought that the city was so huge, he would definitely be able to find them there. At the same time, he went to a variety of places in the city. The boy was upset and tense. He thought that this couldn't be. He had walked around so many places but hadn't found a single one. The main character was sitting on a brick wall. He was thinking about why this was happening. At that moment, he heard screams of someone asking to stop. The boy immediately turned to the source of the sound. The unknown person approached the girl and said that he had done so much. He asked her to go for a walk with him at least once, to which she replied that she had already told him that she did not want to do this. Then the guy asked her not to talk nonsense. The protagonist was angry. He thought about why such people exist in any world. He thought about how one cannot strike openly. The boy thought that he would intentionally miss and distract him, and then we would see. He stood up and began to warm up for a better blow. Then the unknown took advantage of the blow of the wind. The main character immediately looked at what was going on there. As it turned out, one of the guys used this power to teach the troublemaker a lesson. He turned to this boar and said that it was indecent. He had to stop. The latter swore and said that he would bury him. At that moment, the defender took advantage of the wind blow again. After that, the unknown person was blown away from this place. He broke through several boxes. Then the defender turned to the girl and asked if she was okay, to which she replied that everything was fine, after which she thanked him. The defender said that, thank God, he would not allow anything to happen to such a beautiful girl as her. The girl immediately blushed at his words. At that moment, the protagonist looked for magic balls. He found only one, after which he thought that this guy had shot twice. Arad put his hand to his mouth and thought about how he still didn't understand how the fragments were created. He assumed it was random. The main character thought that the city was so noisy. In such a peaceful place you can't find a lot of people who would use magic. The boy thought that he had not found any places where magic was used. He needed to find a place where magic was needed. Then he remembered something. When he was a child, his mother told him that the forest was terribly dangerous and that he should never go there. Then he asked her what was going on there. The woman said that it was full of scary monsters. He thought about what she was showing so nicely. The woman shook her index finger at him and asked him if he understood her, then reminded him not to set foot in the forest. Breaking out of his memories, he thought that this sounded more promising than the city. Until now, he had never even gone near it. But now that he could use magic, if he didn't go there, he would never know. The boy stood up and thought about how he needed to go there. The main character walked along the streets of the city. He looked around. Looking through one arch, he saw several people in black clothes, and one person was lying on the ground. They talked about how, if they had known earlier, they could have cured him with magic. Everyone talks about miraculous power, but when you need it, it's not there. People also said that just a couple of reviving charms would be enough. Another person said that he shouldn't say such things, because it doesn't happen. Life is given by God. There are some things he thought about while this body couldn't even stand up yet. He had a lot of time to think. One of those things was the existence of life magic, whether there was a rebirth or revival magic. The world of swords and sorcery is a standard tool for fantasy anime or games, and since he now lives in such a world, the answers to such questions are important to him. He realized that there are graves and funerals here. The protagonist thought that it was good that he found out about it in time. He should be more careful. After some time, the boy reached the forest. He went inside and thought that the air here was completely different. Even if his mother hadn't warned him, he wouldn't have come here without magic. At that moment, Arad heard footsteps. He thought that someone was approaching. The boy got scared and then dived into the bushes to hide. Looking out from his hiding place, he saw a whole flock of animals rushing past. There were a lot of them. He covered his mouth so as not to make a sound if something happened. However, almost immediately this flock ran away. It did not even stop somewhere near the main character. He thought that they scared him very much. The boy imagined his mother's crying face calling him by name. He thought that if he decided so, he would be reborn in a new world, and his son would be no good. At the same time, the main character walked further through the forest. He thought that it seemed to him that it was better to be extremely careful here. Arad wondered if there was someone else in this forest. He heard some sounds and wondered if they were fighting there. After that, the main character went towards the source of the sound. He sat down near one of the trees so that he could not be seen. Not far away, he saw a huge monster. There were other people fighting this creature. He thought about how realistic the special effects were here. Here, he saw that magic was used on one of these monsters. He was shocked by this. The creature at that moment fell to the ground without signs of life. And at that moment, another monster decided to attack these people. However, they worked as a well-coordinated team, covered each other, and escaped the attacks in time. The protagonist, watching this fight, sighed heavily and thought that he even sweated. At that moment, he saw the magic ball nearby again. He looked around. After that, the boy reached the ball and then touched it. The seal made him understand that this magic was fixed in his subcortex. He thought that he had not risked in vain. In the forests, he understood how magic is used. The protagonist thought that this was great progress. It was already dark. The main thing for him was not to overwork himself, so it was time to go home. At that moment, the boy seemed to hear something. He turned around, but saw nothing. His face became gloomy, but he thought maybe he imagined it. Suddenly, among the foliage, he saw the light from the magic ball. The protagonist took a closer look and saw that it was indeed glowing. His mouth dropped open in surprise. Arad looked around again to make sure no one was following him. Then he came closer and thought, here it is, the fragment. He watched him closely and realized that he could disappear now. So the main character reached out to him with his hand. When the boy barely touched it with his finger, the tone suddenly disappeared, leaving behind a small stream of wind. And at that very moment, unknown symbols appeared in the protagonist's head again. He received a fragment of ancient magic of resurrection of the dead. From the abundance of power, he fell to his knees. The main character immediately thought about the resurrection of the dead and thought that this could really be resurrection magic. How is this even possible? At this time, the unknown person held the crystal in his hands and said that it was beautiful, good, and almost not cloudy. The bald man asked about how it was rare to get such a catch. The girl agreed with him. The other guy said that they needed to go to the guild quickly, where they would exchange it. At that moment, the main character approached them. He apologized to them for disturbing them. The company looked at him and asked who this boy was, if he was lost. The latter asked them if there were any magicians among them, to which the bald man pointed to the girl and said that she was a magician. The girl came closer to him and asked him what his question was, to which he replied that he wanted to ask something of the one who used magic. The main character, with an inquisitive and very attentive face, asked her if she knew anything about ancient magic. To which the girl asked him again about ancient magic, after which she turned to her comrades and asked if they knew about it, to which the men explained that they had no idea about this kind of magic. The girl asked what kind of ancient magic this was, to which the boy replied that he had heard a man in the city say that it was great that he had ancient magic, so he wondered if such a thing even existed. The men started laughing and saying that the guy was just talking. The girl agreed with them and said that there were all kinds of magic, but she had never heard of the ancient one either. The main character apologized to them for asking stupid questions, to which the girl replied that everything was fine, after which she said that it would be better for him to go home quickly since it was dangerous here. She asked him if it was worth walking him home, to which the boy, looking embarrassed, said that he would walk there himself, then waved to them and walked away. The protagonist spoke to several people, each of them saying that no one knew about ancient magic. He wondered if it really existed. Arad's hands curled into fists and he thought about how he could use Google right now. He'd only need one click to get the answer to his question. He misses the internet. In human society, information and knowledge are so valuable even in another world, but since they are not so accessible, they are even more valuable here. He was sitting on a bench near the house. He was thinking that perhaps ancient magic really doesn't exist. At that moment, Robin called him and asked him what he was doing here. The main character looked at his brother, after which he looked displeased. He thought that he had really been drunk since lunch. The guy at that moment was trying to find out the answer to his question. Robin asked what he meant by ancient magic, after which he said that he was clearly talking nonsense again. The guy asked the main character to stop fantasizing. He told him what he was even talking about. He had never heard of ancient magic. Robin told him to think less about stupid things and be more like him. He must improve himself, to which Arad agreed. His brother started talking about him looking at him. He is now close friends with Kevin. At that moment, someone greeted the main character and called him by name. It turned out to be Arya. The protagonist exclaimed in surprise and asked why she was there at all. The girl said that she wanted to show him something, so here she is. Arad was surprised by her words and asked if she really wanted to show him something. He immediately remembered their previous encounter. At that moment, Robin cried out slyly and asked if they were really doing something indecent with her. Arad was shocked by his question. His brother continued to talk nonsense. He said that even though he was a boy, he was already doing such things. Arad wondered if he was serious now. He asked out loud if the boy remembered about Count Louis. Robin replied that of course he remembered, since they had visited him not long ago. The protagonist expected that he would now understand who this girl was, but he still did not understand. Arad thought that he was the worst of the worst. His brother remembers such an important person as the Earl, but his granddaughter's face has forgotten everything. It's so like Robin. If he were an office worker, he would be fired immediately. The main character thought that it was even somehow offensive, but Arya was not at all bothered by Robin's rudeness. She didn't even bat an eye. Arad thought that it was good that it didn't offend her, but Robin is Robin. At that moment, a carriage drove up to them. Everyone didn't understand what was going on and why the carriage was there. A fat man in glasses jumped out of it. He turned to Arya and said that she couldn't be here alone. To which the girl replied that everything was fine because she had magic. The man said that this would not work. If something happened to her, that he would tell the master. Arya told him to stop. What was he making so much noise about? And she called him Craig. At that moment, Robin saw the Louis family crest on the carriage. It dawned on him that this girl was really a relative of the Count himself. The main character thought that it had finally happened. He was definitely a slowpoke. Robin smiled sweetly and said that he was pleased to see her, after which he introduced himself and said his name. The girl, shocked, asked what was going on. She then said that he is the protagonist's brother, so she is pleased to meet him. After this, Arya turned to Arad and asked if he had finished talking to his brother, to which he replied positively. The main character asked her if she really wanted to show him something, to which the girl happily answered positively and headed towards him. Robin was shaking with indignation at that moment. Arya approached the boy and said with a smile that this is what she came to show him, after which she turned to her servant. The girl cast a new spell. Magical waves began to appear around her, and a small ball formed in her hand. Arad wondered if she was casting a spell. At that moment, the created ball burned through the fabric in the man's hands. Arya turned to the protagonist and asked his opinion on the matter. The latter winced and asked what she meant. The girl laughed and said that she thought he wanted to see more. She said that magic shouldn't be used in vain. Arad thought that she seemed to have gone into a strange mode. Arya said that it is also undesirable to use all your power at once. It is important to be able to control your own magic. The protagonist thought that he understood everything. The boy looked at his hand and thought that when you store magic, it definitely becomes more concentrated, but he didn't finish his thought because he looked at the girl and thought that this was perfect. Arad, looking at her, thought that it seemed to him that she tried very hard, all in order to demonstrate to him. Such a small thing, but she put in a lot of effort. The main character said with a smile that it was great, he didn't expect anything else from the girl. She immediately turned her gaze to him. Her face turned red. She said that it was nothing special. Arad looked at her and thought that she was clearly happy with his words. Then the main character looked around and wondered where his brother had gone. When had he managed to leave at all, because it had been very unnoticeable. At that moment, Arya leaned towards him and said that if he wanted, she would teach him how to do it too. They were both already using fireballs. The main character thought about how nostalgic it was. He remembered the times when he played with his friends as a child. He said out loud that if it wasn't too hard for her, he agreed, and he laughed. At that moment, his name was called. He and the girl looked in the direction of the sound. It turned out that it was his brother. There was a guy standing next to him. Robin said that he wanted to introduce him to them. This is Kevin, he is the main one on Carif Street. The latter sighed heavily. The protagonist asked what was going on. He thought to himself that his brother was strange. Who could it even be? Then he looked at the girl and thought about the strange feeling of competition that had arisen in him. He wondered if Robin really wanted to compete with Arya. Then he looked at his brother and realized that his face gave him away. The main character looked at all the people present and thought about whose turn it was to brag now and what kind of atmosphere had developed around here. At that moment, another carriage arrived. Everyone immediately looked in that direction. A servant in a mask placed a stand in front of the carriage to make it easier to get out. As it turned out, it was Earl Burton. Everyone was surprised by this fact. Robin was shocked, and Kevin was wondering what was going on here. The Count spoke of how many people there were. Then he turned his gaze to Robin and asked if he was the protagonist's brother. He answered positively. He gave his name, to which the Count told him to keep up the good work. The boy thanked him for that, after which he turned to Kevin and said that they had to go. As he left, Robin turned to the protagonist and looked at him angrily. The latter thought that he shouldn't look at him. It must have hurt his pride as the eldest son. He had already been called Arad's brother twice. After this, Count Burton examined the remaining people, after which he turned to the girl and asked why she was here. She said that she wanted to talk to Arad about many things. They both use fireballs. To which the man said that he understood everything. She was also eager to learn. The boy thought that she had come rather to brag. After that, the girl asked her relative why he was here today. The Count hesitated at first, then his gaze caught on one interesting thing. He looked at the symbols drawn on the ground and asked who wrote it, to which the main character replied that he did it. After this, Count Burton's face became more serious, and he asked the boy where he got this information from. Arad thought that he had asked the wrong people. Information and knowledge were valuable, and aristocrats would certainly have them. Now he was convinced that the Count knew about ancient magic that was practically unknown to anyone. Count Burton looked at the main character very seriously. Even Arya was frightened by this, after which she turned to him. The man at that moment said that he would ask again. He asked how the protagonist found out about it, to which the latter thought about it, because he would not be able to ask him about ancient magic until he answered his question. You can't just lie to a man like the Count. He has such a crushing aura. He thinks it's better not to tell him about the fragments. The boy said that when he took possession of the magic, he heard a voice. He thought to himself that he was speaking as if he himself was guilty of something. Count Burton chuckled and asked if he had really heard the voice of a deity. The protagonist wondered if everyone who masters magic could really hear him. This was a lucky coincidence. The boy said that this voice told him about ancient magic. At first the man looked at him carefully, then looked up at the sky, scratched his chin and said that he understood everything. After that, the man turned around and walked away. The protagonist followed him with his eyes in surprise. The boy asked Count Burton if he was leaving already. He thought to himself that he hadn't asked him about ancient magic yet. The man said that he thought this conversation was not quick, so he would send him an official invitation later. After that, he turned his gaze to the main character. He didn't even blink. He calmly looked back and said that he understood everything. It would be good. Then Count Burton looked at Arya's servant and asked her if he was her only companion. Craig apologized to the man at that moment. The girl immediately turned to him and said that her servant was not bad at all. Arya said that she had acted selfishly, so he shouldn't be blamed, but she didn't have time to finish because the Count interrupted her and said that she was so smart. Earl Burton said that they were aristocrats, so they had to keep up appearances. Then he asked her if she understood him, to which she replied in the affirmative. The man said that they were born to have status and they never go out without an escort. He added that Louis was also worried. The girl apologized to him again. At that moment, the main character saw that the guy who had been at the reception was standing nearby. After that, the Count returned to the carriage, which sped away from the house. When he looked again at the place where the guy was standing, there was no one there. At that moment, he turned his attention to Arya. She was very sad. Her servant tried to calm her down and asked her not to lose heart. The boy realized that he had to intervene. He turned to the girl and asked if she would teach him that magic thing, to which she turned to him with a smile and said that she had already promised him. After that, Arya looked at her right hand. He wondered if she was a little tired, but the girl asked him with a smile on her face what he wanted to learn. Arad realized that he was wrong in his assumptions. The protagonist imagined his family. The girl said that she would teach her dad too, to which the latter asked if she would really teach him to tie a ribbon, to which she answered positively and said that everything was ready. The man said that it was great. Then she said that she would teach her uncle too, to which he asked if it was true, after which he said that it was not her uncle but her brother. Arad wondered if her father had felt the same way when she taught him. At the moment, Arya called Craig by name. The protagonist was thinking at that moment that if you take, for example, a glass and tilt it, the water will spill. The level of tilt will determine how much water will spill. Arya said that if you think of mana as water, you can adjust the amount of it when using it, to which Arad replied that he understood everything. He thought that it was just like the manga he read as a child. If you think about it, it was a direct guide to the current reality. At this time, the girl continued to explain what to do. Arya demonstrated her power to him again, to which the boy asked if she was okay, if she was tired, to which she replied that you can't get tired of something like that, after which she told him to try it himself. Arad thought about how he should not overdo it, but stay relaxed, as he usually did when hunting. The main thing for him was not to overdo it. He thought about the fact that he needed to direct and control, and also needed to make the blow weaker than Arya's. However, at that moment, something strange happened. It looked like his magic had rebounded. He wondered if he had made it too weak. Arya laughed sweetly at him and told him not to get upset. Usually no one succeeds the first time, to which he thanked her for her support. The protagonist looked at the happy girl and thought that everything was clear to him. Probably magic was even more tiring if you use it at your level. And he also thought about what she was so happy about. Maybe the control of magic creates an additional load on the magic circuits. The smaller the fireball, the faster the magic is spent, the more tiring it is. If you reduce it to the limit, the magic itself will not withstand and bounce off. At that moment, Craig's loud cry was heard. He turned to Arya and told her to run. At that moment, the man fell to the ground in front of them, unconscious. The girl immediately called out his name. She asked the strangers what they were doing, but they ignored her and began to talk among themselves about whether Arad was their target, since he matched the description. One man said that he could not allow him to hang around. At that moment, Arya tried to attack them, but she failed. The protagonist thought that the magic was over, and he also managed to shoot the fireball twice. Then the boy saw that these unknown people were using spells. He realized that they were also magicians. After that, he grabbed the girl by the hand and ran away with her. The strangers were watching them and saying that he would not escape. Another man asked permission to do so. When Arad turned around, the man was already casting a spell. After they struck, the protagonist managed to take the girl aside so that they would not be hit. He thought that the field was too open, so they needed to run in the other direction. After that, Arad and Arya ran towards the forest. One of the strangers said that the magus should be more careful because they didn't want the boy to die. If they killed him, they would get into trouble. At this time, the main character and the girl hid behind one of the trees. He covered her mouth with his hand and gestured for her to be silent. They continued to be attacked. After some time, the mage squatted down and said that he was already tired. They also concluded that Arad was not really dead. Suddenly, a huge ice floe appeared in front of them. The strangers looked at this object in shock and wondered what kind of ice coffin it was. At that moment, Arya watched the actions of the main character with her mouth wide open. A few moments earlier, someone unknown started screaming very loudly. The girl was very scared. She also wanted to join the scream, but the boy covered her mouth with his hand. The magician told them that no matter how long they hid in the forest, their screams would definitely give them away. After which he used his magic again. At that very moment, one of the attacker's shells fell right next to the boy's. Arya was in shock. She was ready to scream at the top of her lungs, but the boy covered her mouth with his last strength. The hooded man said that it was getting even more fun, but at the same time he turned to the magician and said that he was getting too carried away. At that moment, the protagonist saw that the attacks were happening very close to them. He thought that things had gotten really bad. The strangers stood there and thought that this couple would come out sooner or later. At the same time, they realized that Arad was not really dying. The boy thought that everything was too bad. What should he do? They certainly wouldn't kill him in Japan. He thought that this couldn't happen. He was really scared. Then he saw fragments of a magic ball nearby. Following his gaze, he realized that there were a lot of them here. A large number of these fragments were reflected in his eyes. The protagonist immediately began to move towards them to quickly collect them. Arya watched his actions in shock and did not understand what was happening. When the boy touched one of the balls, he realized that the ice rock fragment had reached its peak. Mastery was complete. He was happy and thought that this was his only chance. After this, the main character stood up on his feet, and then he put his hands in front of him and began to cast ice magic. At that moment, the unknowns saw the ice pillar being created. They did not understand what was happening. Did Arad really have the same magic as the mage? The others asked him about it in shock. They were very surprised and started asking how this was possible. Wasn't he the one who used fireballs? At that moment, the main character exhaled, then turned to the girl and said that they needed to run. At first, she didn't understand him, but he quickly grabbed her hand and they ran away. Arad said that the forest is the same as the garden. Everything is fine. They will be able to escape. To which Arya closed one eye and asked why they were running away. She said that they could have just gotten rid of those bad people, to which the boy replied that he couldn't let her get hurt. At that moment, the cries of unknown people reached their ears. They asked them to stand. They realized that they had managed to escape. The unknown people immediately rushed after them. The main character cursed and thought that they couldn't escape from them in the forest. The girl said that they were catching up. At that moment, a noise reached his ears. He shouted to her that they needed to turn at a certain place. The strangers were chasing them. They were saying that the boys were continuing to run away, but once they got tired, they couldn't do it anymore, and then it would be the end for them. The girl, with tears in her eyes, called the main character by name, to which he, with a slight smile, said that everything was fine, she should not worry. At that moment, they ran out onto a small vacant lot. He saw some trees on the side, after which he told her to hide. They sat in ambush, hoping not to be seen. Arya had just spoken to him when he motioned for her to be quiet. At that moment, unknown people appeared in the clearing. They asked about where they had gone. They should be close, so they would look for them. Each of the unknowns began to clear the area in their own way. The girl sat and shook with fear, and then the main character put his palm on her hands and smiled encouragingly at her. At that moment, the unknowns heard some noise, someone's screams. They asked what was going on. And suddenly, a monster appeared out of nowhere. They were shocked and asked if this was really the territory of a huge monster. One of the men said that he didn't even know such people existed. He suggested that they go away. At that moment, they saw the main character with a girl, to which the other man said that they should forget about them and run away. The man said that this time, Arad would definitely not run away, and the second man said that he was not smart, after which the first man changed his shoes and said that they should run away. At that moment, the main character, still holding the girl's hand, ran as far away from that place as possible. The latter looked at him, and there was an embarrassed blush on her face. They were being watched while they were running. The stranger said that the boy had clearly passed the test. The fair-haired one said that he realized that they couldn't win, so he ran away. The dark-haired one said that he pretended to run away, but he lured the three into the monster's lair. Children his age usually can't do that. The guy went on to say that he doubted that even an incompetent adventurer could do that, let alone someone of his age. One of these guys turned out to be the one who had been at the reception of Earl Burton. The light one said that because of Arad's intelligence, they had no opportunity to show off. Then he asked what they would do. The dark one, hanging upside down, asked if he really meant that company. The dark-haired man said that they should go. They weren't that good. Since the girl was okay, they could go. Then the fair-haired man asked if there was anything wrong with that. The other man asked what he meant. The fair-haired man asked about the fact that he didn't understand, to which the second one answered that he was asking for that reason. Then the guy asked about what would happen if the count asked who the attackers were. The dark-haired guy said that it was her own fault for going out without an escort, to which the fair-haired guy replied that it wasn't every day that an aristocrat's child was attacked. The fair-haired man asked if he really thought the count wouldn't ask who they were, because then it would be bad. Then the dark-haired man understood the meaning of his words, after which he jumped to the ground and said that he was already on his way and that they couldn't die without him. The fair-haired man turned to his comrade and asked him if he really didn't know how old Arad was, to which he replied that he assumed he was about 6 years old. The fair-haired one said that the 6-year-old completely outperformed the dark-haired one in assessing the situation, To which the latter replied that it had only happened today. His friend continued to mock him. The blonde thought about the main character and said that he was clearly a funny guy. The latter continued to run through the forest. He was still tense. The protagonist and Arya ran back to the clearing. Ice shards were stuck into the ground along the way. When they ran to the training place, the girl immediately called her servant by name. She ran up to him and asked if he had fallen asleep. At that moment, the man started to moo. When he came to, he immediately turned to Arya and said that it was dangerous here, she should run away, to which the latter replied that everything was fine. Craig looked around and it was clear that he had not yet fully come to his senses. He asked what had happened. At this point, the main character intervened in the conversation. He said that it was still not safe here. He turned to the man and told him to take the girl and run away quickly. Arad turned in the direction they had come from and said that he wouldn't be surprised if they came back. They definitely needed to leave as soon as possible. At that moment, the girl called out to her servant by name. The latter told the protagonist that he was right, after which he turned to Arya and said that they needed to hurry, and she agreed with him. After this, Arad led them to the carriage they had left behind. He sat them down and then waved goodbye. Suddenly, the carriage stopped. A moment later, the door opened and Arya ran towards him. He called her name. The girl tried to catch her breath. The boy asked her what had happened. She hesitated a little. It was obvious that she was very worried. She tugged at her hair, after which, with embarrassment in her voice, she thanked him for saving her. The protagonist wondered if she was serious, if she had come back specifically to thank him. She was so proper, no wonder, that was the way aristocratic girls were brought up. He would have cried if he had an older brother like that. The boy looked at Arya, but she remained where she was, and then he called her name and asked what was happening to her. Craig waited patiently for her near the carriage, and even the horse was already wondering how long they would be here. The girl stuttered and turned to the main character and said that he was cool. Her face was as red as a tomato. Arad looked at his clothes and said that his clothes were now not so much cool as dirty, to which Arya began to argue and say that she didn't mean that at all. The girl tried to explain to him what she was talking about, to which the main character replied that he understood. Was she really surprised that he was so cool? Arya's face turned even redder. She asked him what he was saying, to which he asked what was wrong. The girl started arguing with him and saying that this was all wrong. The main character no longer understood what was happening. He tried to bring the conversation back to normal. Arya said that if he keeps pretending to be cool, he'll get into trouble, so he should be careful. After that, she sulked and headed back to the carriage, where she climbed inside and slammed the door loudly. She called Craig and told him to drive. The protagonist thought that she was an aristocrat, would never say bad words, she was so nice. It seems that he treats the girl more and more like a father. The boy continued to wander down the street. He looked into the distance and thought that the unknown people were no longer chasing him. He assumed that perhaps the monster had killed them. The protagonist remembered the appearance of the attacking monster and thought that if such a creature attacked, then there would probably be no time for pursuit. After that, Arad looked at his hand doubtfully. He looked around again to make sure no one was nearby. He thought about how he didn't care, but why did the mages of this world openly cast spells in public? Aren't they embarrassed? He remembered how awkward it was to cast spells right in the classroom, like children. After that, the main character, still sitting on the stump, began to read the spell. He decided to use the magic of the ice rock. After that, a small rock actually appeared in front of him, which was only 20 or 30 centimeters. He wondered if this was really all the power. It seemed like the one who attacked had about the same. The protagonist remembered the clearing with ice shards and magic balls and thought that with such a large number of fragments, magic could be learned in no time. Some unknown battle was taking place. A large number of shells were flying in different directions. People were trying to defend themselves, someone was holding a sword in their hands, and there were also a large number of unknown creatures. The protagonist stood in the middle of all this chaos. He raised his hand up, there were magical signs near it, and around him there were a large number of magical fragments. Arad thought that if he did this, he could collect as many fragments as he could fit, but he wouldn't die for long. He felt like he was starting to fantasize in an already game fantasy world. He thought that he couldn't risk his life like that. It was obvious. Even if ancient magic existed, even if he could learn rebirth magic, he wouldn't be able to use it on himself. Still, healing and restoration magic is very different. If it existed, it would be so great. And then he decided to stop thinking about magic that was beyond his control. He decided that he needed to start with the basics. First, he needs to try magic, which he already knows. He is so lucky to have magic related to ice. Both flame and ice can be changed in size. However, ice, unlike flame, is a solid thing. It is easier to change its shape. After this, the main character began to read the spell. He thought about what he needed to concentrate on and imagine in front of him. He thought of an object to make it thinner, longer, and stronger. When he opened his eyes, he saw the silhouette of a ball. It took time, but he was able to change the shape. If he practices, he can do it faster. Suddenly, the main character thought that now it seemed that something was bothering him. He thought about what it could be. After that, he stuck the weapon he had received into the ground. Arad looked at his hands and thought that he needed to reproduce the same flow as before. He closed his eyes and began to chant. The sword appeared in his hand again. He thought that he realized that he was worried about time. If he used mana, it should take less time. At this point, the protagonist seemed to be turned on by something about time. He thought that if the theories were correct, then this should work. The protagonist began to cast the spell again. He used the magic of the ice rock. However, at that moment, nothing appeared in front of him at all. At that moment, a blonde and a dark-haired guy were walking towards him. They called out to him and asked if he was still there. The dark-haired man started talking about a huge lizard in the forest. At that moment, an incomprehensible sound began to be heard in the air, after which an ice sculpture was created. Both guys were shocked by what was happening. The created object immediately fell to the ground in front of the main character. The latter thought about what he had done. Silence fell on the clearing. Arad continued to look at the object he had created with distrust. The boys asked him about what had just happened. The protagonist realized that they had seen his magic. The dark-haired man asked him if he could really create delayed spells at such an age. At the same time, they were in great shock. The dark-haired man asked the protagonist if someone had taught him. The latter hesitated with his answer, as he did not know what to say. He thought about what was happening. It wasn't something that children usually had. He felt bad that they had seen it. He wondered if maybe he should just duck the question. The dark-haired man summed it up and said that it meant no one taught him. It was amazing that he had managed to get hold of the deferred spell on his own. Arad tried to deny everything. The guy asked if he was serious, that no one could teach him such a complicated spell. The blonde guy told Arad that he had great talent. The protagonist said that someone taught him, to which the dark-haired man said that he was lying. Arad thought about how he had exposed him. The dark-haired man said that he was poor. At that moment, the fair-haired man hit him, thereby making him shut up. He asked his friend if it was because he didn't know the reason that he was behaving this way. The dark-haired man apologized to Arad and said that he had no intention of offending him. The fair-haired man also apologized for him and said that he really didn't want to offend him. He was just being frivolous. The protagonist said that everything was fine. He thought to himself that he was not just poor, but insanely poor. The dark-haired man offered to teach him something as an apology. The fair-haired man was shocked by what he had started. After that, the Dark One read the spell. He suggested to the main character that he try and lightly touch the object. The latter thought that although he had said to touch, at the moment when he did it, something seemed to push him away. The dark-haired man laughed and asked how he felt about it, to which the protagonist asked what it was. The blonde man interrupted the conversation and asked what he was doing now, teaching or bragging. Arad pretended not to listen to them. The fair-haired man said that if his friend was going to teach, he should explain properly. The boy listened to his friend, then turned to Arad and suggested starting over. The delayed spell he used should work on its own after a certain amount of time. The dark-haired man said that he had just shown how he had stopped the spell from launching. Arad repeated the last words after him and said that the trigger for launching was not time, but impulse. The protagonist thought that he realized that if he changed the conditions for launching the spell, he could make it switchable rather than temporary. The boy thought that magic was somewhat similar to programming. He became interested and smiled broadly. They continued their work. The protagonist thought that he thought the dark-haired man was useless, but it turned out that he taught great. Being under the head of the family is not only about bragging. The fair-haired man turned to Arad and said that his concentration of power was amazing, to which he apologized to him and said that he had accidentally done it for too long. To this, the interlocutor answered that he was simply admiring. It seemed that Arad was tired, but was his mana in order, after which he asked if he would mind if he clarified something with him. The fair-haired man asked if it was true that he had been attacked by those three strange guys, to which the protagonist answered positively. Then the guy asked him if he knew who they were. The protagonist thought about his words, after which he realized that he did not know who it was. The guys looked at each other. They were pleased with his answer. Arad wondered out loud why this had happened to him. To which the dark-haired man replied that, in case anything happened, Count Burton had told them to stay and look after the girl. The protagonist thought about it and realized why they were there. After that, the guys asked him if these unknown people reminded him of anything. After that, the boy turned his head from side to side, thus showing his negative answer. Then the boys said that they understood everything, after which they said that it was getting dark. The dark-haired man said that they would go, and he addressed the boy by name. The fair-haired man said that he was actually an aristocrat too. Then the guy said that Arad was now his good student. To which his friend said that he understood everything. After that, the boys walked away, waving to the main character. The latter thought that he should thank him properly the next time they met. He decided to continue his studies. The hero admits that this is the most difficult task he has ever faced. He tries to improve his performance, but feels that his actions are ineffective and does not understand whether he is doing the right thing. The boy decides to learn by doing and hopes that the situation will become safer as darkness falls. The child plans to use the object as a trap and hopes that it will be successful. The catch will tell whether he did it freely or not. The protagonist believes that there is no better spell to set traps and decides to set it again. He wonders how his actions went in other places. The guy sees that he has dodged here and realizes that the location could have been chosen a little better, but still thinks that he has improved the situation. The boy realizes that if the magic is set up correctly, it will not turn off on its own, and expresses satisfaction with his success. He is happy to see the revenue, and thinks that it has skyrocketed, and thinks that he can make a lot of money. A child thinks about the need to buy a gift while walking down the street. The young man asks in surprise why no one returned home. It is said to be a device for detecting people using magic. The hero explains that when a pulse is applied to the switch at the input, a small fireball is triggered, and a candle in a bowl notifies when people come and go. The character notices that the switch is not working properly and expresses confusion. The man notices that the candle does not light and expresses surprise. The protagonist examines the switch and notes that there are no signs of its activation, doubting the disappearance of the magic since he installed it this morning. He speculates that there may have been a spell that disabled the magic and wonders about the cause of this phenomenon. The boy thinks that someone did this on purpose, and they begin to suspect that it could be directed against him. A woman says good morning to Robin. The guy asks why black bread again and if there is any wheat bread. The maid apologizes and explains that this is the only bread available today. The hero says that black bread is not tasty. It is explained that Robin has become selfish because he was an only child for a long time. Someone knocks on the door. The characters are surprised who came so early. Arad thinks it's because of yesterday and thinks he needs to be vigilant. The maid apologizes and says they are having breakfast here. The man asks if this is Mr. Vare's milking. The woman confirms the correctness of what was said and asks who he is. The gentleman in black apologizes for not introducing himself and explains that he is a representative of the Earl of Burton. Robin happily says that it is a messenger from the main house who has come for him. His father asks him to calm down. The protagonist thinks that he really has the airs of a major aristocrat. The man introduces himself as Ryan, the head of the house, and apologizes for the other man's behavior, and asks what brings the representative here. The messenger explains that he has come to fulfill Sir Burton's promise to Arad. This is an invitation on behalf of the Earl. The father says that they must go immediately, so as not to keep the other waiting. The boy says that he is ready. They apologize for any inconvenience and explain that the carriage was unable to get to the village due to technical reasons. The child says that it is nothing to worry about. Asks men to stand up. The hero asks for forgiveness and expresses surprise when he learns that he does not need to take off his shoes. The gentleman in black notes that his brother was very angry at that moment. He notes that the guy was very concerned about the people around him and asks the reason. Arad realized that he was watching him and realized that he was not such a simple person. The boy says that as the Count's envoy he will have no escort, which could push his brother to rash actions. The character says that he is as perceptive as they say. The hero jokes that if his brother had grabbed him then, it would have caused inconvenience. Arad expresses confidence that there must be an escort somewhere nearby. Another character claims that he is not at all arrogant about having gained magic at such a young age, and that the entire mansion is buzzing with rumors of the hero, and that Sir Burton did not hesitate to meet him. The boy is surprised to see that he is being praised so much and asks if this is really true. The Count's butler turns to the hero and says that he may be presumptuous. He asks, as the Count's servant, to ask him for something. And he adds that Arad, although young, is still an aristocrat. He asks that in front of others, he behave in accordance with his position. The guy apologizes. And he says he understands. It is reportedly a heavy burden for a former Japanese man who grew up in a hierarchical society based on seniority and hard work. It is said that the road changed and they entered a toll road. The butler explains that the road was built by the Count in conjunction with some merchants exclusively for horse-drawn transport, a system of charging a toll in exchange for ongoing maintenance. Arad expresses amazement as it looks like a high-speed highway and wonders how he can personally take on such a project for which the country has allocated a huge budget. The boy believes that nothing is impossible for aristocrats. The clerk asks the hero how he noticed them and thinks he is very observant. The guy asks to stop. The man asks to stop the carriage. The main character is surprised, realizing that all this is the result of one magic. He notices that the invisibility fragments have reached their peak, and he has mastered this state. The guy says he's not telling the whole story. The child discovers lines on his palm that are similar to those of other people and is surprised by the change. The character wonders where this magic, which is different from the previous ones, came from and tries to understand its meaning. The butler asks what happened and notices that the other character has a face as if his cherished wish had come true. He adds that it seemed that way to him. The aristocrat replies that nothing of the sort happened. He thinks about how he dreamed of such magic, and that if he studies magic at this rate, he will very soon exceed the age threshold. The only way to get magic is first of all to be baptized on his birthday. Arad reasons that it is theoretically impossible to gain more than 7 magics by the age of 6, and he wanted something that could solve this problem. With the help of invisibility magic, this is possible. With its help, he will be able to change the appearance of magic. The boy notes that they quickly got to the place before it got dark. The hero points to the place where he stopped halfway and suggests that something is hidden there. He notices the other character's reaction and concludes that there really is something there. He was amazed by the wealth, saying that he understood everything, but from such luxury his eyes, accustomed to poverty, hurt. The maids apologized, and one of them offered tea. She said it was the second best brew from the tea plantations on their estate. Arad asked if everything was like that. The girl was embarrassed and apologized. She explained that she didn't mean to. The maid apologized again, saying that she had become too excited to meet someone she had heard so much about. The guy was surprised to hear about the rumors. The maid confirmed that yes, the whole mansion was talking about him now. Many said that they had heard about his success and would like to meet him. One of the maids assured him that the girl would be reprimanded and apologize later. The young man understood what was going on. Protagonist remembered the butler's words and said that he would not mind meeting the others if the Count did not object. The girls thought he was even better than they said, and the guy was tired of formal speech and thought he wasn't very good at being firm. He saw an old man and asked who he was. The old man replied that he was just a guest, and noted how young and innocent the boy was. Called him funny and noted that his every gesture exuded politeness. The guy introduced himself and was surprised why he was called funny. The character explained that his behavior seemed to have been ingrained in him for many years, but his upbringing was still different from that of an aristocrat. And he adds that this is why he is funny. The boy remembered that in another world he was told about his politeness at business meetings with foreigners, and now he is told about it in another world too. The hero asked him what he wanted. He remembered and said that he wanted to talk about what the guy asked Joseph, the butler. Arad asked if he was talking about the road. The old man asked how he knew that the butler Joseph was hiding something. He replied that he saw traces of magic being used, and from the moment he told the butler about it, he knew what he would answer if asked. The bald man was surprised that he was seeing this. The guy decided that standing and fidgeting was not the best idea, so he should only tell the truth. The man noted that such a skill was rare and not often encountered. He asked if the boy would see this too. The young man asked about the tracks at his feet. The character grinned and lifted his glasses. He said that he could indeed see them properly. The bearded man asked the old man what he thought. Said that this child sees traces of magic and even guessed about what he was deliberately not told. The character said that it was good work. The old man laughed and said that it was nothing special and suggested that the guy talk sometime, and he happily agreed. The character looked out the window, wondering if it was there. He wondered whether this was deliberate negligence or a mistake. He mentioned that he had suspected something was wrong with the construction work for some time. The guy thought with surprise that it was in that place that there were fragments of invisibility magic. The man explained that if it were just rumors, he would have left it at that. But since concealment magic was involved, he decided to entrust the investigation to specialists. The man praised Arad, saying that he had done a good deed. The boy was embarrassed and thanked him. The character noted that Veer had raised him well and invited him to sit down. Arad thanked him and, as he sat down, wondered what had prompted the man's question. He replied that he was now very careful because if he did something stupid, his father's reputation would suffer, and now he was very careful. Another character noted that thinking at such an age and did not finish, and the child noted that he had a brilliant opposite. It is reported that he was previously told what it means to be an aristocrat. From the moment they are born, they carry the name of their family, and everything, their home, land, people, and every step they take, becomes the family's reputation. The man added that this would be the case even after the end of life, and told them not to forget about it. Arad thanked him for the treats. The character suggested moving on to the main objective of the day, indicating that he had a main question. He asked the child if he knew his title. The boy assumed it was Sir Burton, but the Earl corrected him, saying it was a family name. He explained that he was now often called Earl Burton, but that his title had originally sounded different. The protagonist replied that he understood. It is said that in Japan, everything often comes from the names of places, such as the Date family of Sendai Principality, Lord Date of Sendai County. Arad apologized and said he didn't know, noting that he had never heard of such a thing. The Count replied that he was in charge of the Meteor Strike County. The hero was delighted, thinking that it would be terribly useful in boss fights. The man said that it was the name of ancient magic, and he asked in shock what it was. Burton was surprised. The boy was embarrassed, explaining that he thought it was some kind of cool magic and was horrified by his reaction. The character suggested going back to history. He explained that all the current titles of counts and dukes are actually connected to the names of magics that once existed. The guy understood what was going on. The man added that everything was outdated now, and few people, hearing meteorite strike, understood that it was ancient magic. The protagonist approached Sir Burton and asked if there was anything he was protecting as the Earl of Meteor Strike. The child thought it was just a guess, but if such a place existed, it must be the key to ancient magic. The master confirmed that such a place existed, and Arad exclaimed, "Bingo!" The boy excitedly asked where it was. The man laughed, and the boy apologized, thinking that he had been impolite. The Count reassured him, saying that there was nothing wrong with curiosity, and remarked that the boy seemed to have a particularly inquisitive mind. The man thought it was a good opportunity and wanted to show him the place, but the boy asked if it was possible. He explained that the title and lands and the meteor strike were entrusted to him by His Majesty, so he could not make decisions on his own. But he asked for a few days, which surprised Arad. Sir said he would get permission, but for now he told him to stay at the estate and asked if they had come to an agreement. The boy happily agreed and thanked him. He thought that perhaps this place was connected with the magic of the meteor strike. The protagonist realized that the title of the Count was the name of magic, which meant that his guess was not so far from the truth. It seemed to him that this was a real-life computer role-playing game. Hearing a knock at the door, the boy wondered who it could be. 3 maids came in and said that the Count had ordered them to look after him. The boy was confused when he noticed that they were still children. He thought that one of the girls was as small as he was. She said that she would be happy to help. The hero was confused and didn't know what to do now. He asked the girls why they were here. The girls said that they would take care of him, so he could feel free to ask about anything. The young man realized that they were just waiting for instructions. Arad asked if the room was ready for him to stay in. The girl confirmed and invited him to follow her, and he thought that he could stay alone in the room. He thought that the ordinary things in this world were very unusual. At that moment, one of the maids tripped and fell. The other began to scold her, telling her to get up immediately. She apologized, but the older one continued to scold her. Then she showed Arad his room. The maid served the hero tea in embarrassment. One of the servants remarked to another that the handle of the teapot should be on the other side. A man was scolding another, asking if he understood what he had done wrong. He told him to shut up when he apologized, and complained that he felt no remorse. The character asked for the bill. The boy asked if he could ask a question. One of the maids said yes and asked what had happened. He asked why they always shouted in front of him, and asked if they raised their voices in front of others as well. Arad realized that they were ignoring him. The maids immediately apologized, assuring that they had not meant it at all. The protagonist said that they were free to go, however, he asked one of the girls to stay behind when the older one led them. The character asked if they had any objections. The maids responded fearfully that they had none, and, apologizing, quickly left. He wondered if he had behaved like an aristocrat. Remembering how he had suffered from criticism in his past life, he regretted lashing out at them. And he thought that now he even understood Robin. Controlling himself turned out to be terribly difficult. The girl apologized, but he said that everything was fine and asked her to make some black tea because his throat was dry. The character hurried to fulfill the request. He advised her not to worry but to calm down and do everything slowly. The man added that if you make a mistake that can be corrected, you just need to correct it. After a moment of silence, she quietly agreed. He asked if she was new. The girl replied that she had been working there since last year, and he remarked on how young she still was. Arad said he understood because the first year is the hardest. He remembered how he himself had an overbearing boss and how he panicked because of the high demands. The hero thought that, on the other hand, he coordinated his subordinates better, trying not to ask unnecessary questions. The guy laughed and told her not to pay attention. After tasting the tea she brought, he thanked her and said that everything was perfect. The young man thought that the point of being a newbie was to learn, not to avoid making mistakes. He wondered why people forgot what it was like to be a newbie. The girl began to ask why he was so kind, but stopped short. He noticed that she had become bolder and hoped that she would be less afraid. The action is reported to take place the next morning. The protagonist woke up with a pain in his lower back and realized that he had become too accustomed to sleeping on the floor. His body no longer accepts a soft bed. He looked out the window, surprised by the noise outside, seeing something in the front yard and with the maids who had come. The head maid apologized for the noise. She explained that it was due to the girl who had looked after him the day before. And she said that today was her birthday, and by divine revelation she received magic, which surprised Arad very much. The girl tried to style his hair. He couldn't calm down from excitement. The protagonist asked if the girl's name was Clax, and the head maid confirmed that it was. Meanwhile, another girl tried to style his hair, but she couldn't do it. The boy asked if she was still in the temple. The maid replied that she had already returned to the estate, but she herself did not yet know what magic she had acquired. The boy hoped that the magic would be useful to her because she was a serious girl. However, the other maid thought that this annoying girl was doomed to failure. The young man asked where Clax was now. The woman said she would take him and told the other one, May, to go to Joseph, which surprised her greatly. The girl told her to go, and she reluctantly agreed. Arad asked if this was the same butler who had brought him, and the maid replied that he was, and that he sometimes lectured them. He asked if Joseph was a scary person, because it was hard to imagine. She said that as long as they did a good job he cared about them very much, and he thought that she could see in her eyes that she couldn't deny it. At this time, the young lady invited him to go into the courtyard. Arad thanked him for his help. The other boy told him to stop treating him like that and jokingly forbade him to behave like that. The guy asked if he had heard about the girl who had received magic. Upon hearing confirmation, he suggested going to take a look. The friend explained that she had received magic, but so far she had been unsuccessful with spells, although everyone tried to tell her what was what. The hero asked how many times she had tried. His comrade replied that she had tried every time since she returned. The friend asked why he was so worried about it. Arad replied that it was nothing and recalled the old man's words about him guessing about the magic that had not worked. He remembered saying that a failed spell left fragments behind, and he realized that the ones he had touched but could not collect were the failed magic. The protagonist thought that he still did not understand the aspects of the fragment's appearance. However, looking at the girl, he wondered why, no matter how many she managed, not a single one appeared. Someone called the boy the youngest of the Count's family line. He said that Arad was his student, which gave the hero a bad feeling. His friend pushed him towards the girls, telling him to go. The guy was mentally outraged that he was sending him away with such a face, because inside he was already an adult. Walking towards the girl, he thought that he understood him after all. After all, if he had seen such a scene with children, he would have stood and smiled too. He wished her a good morning and congratulated her on her birthday. The girl thanked him shyly. The boy asked what magic she had gained. She did not know what to answer. The hero said with delight that he would also like to try it. The maid replied that she had not succeeded at all yet and that she was embarrassed because she was afraid of making a mistake. Arad realized that she was afraid of making a mistake and therefore did not use magic at all. The girl began to deny it, but he guessed that this was why the fragments never appeared. The young man said that she could fix everything and repeated his words, said earlier, that when making a mistake that can be corrected, you just need to correct it. The maid decided to try for him. She performed magic and glowing sparks appeared around her. It is reported that he had been playing for over a quarter of a century, and before his rebirth he was an avid gamer and believed that the most important thing in a computer role-playing game is teamwork, and he most often chose mages. He explained that he was a mage who buffed others. It is explained that a buff is a temporary addition of statuses to characters during a fight using magic, and that it is the most important element of victory. And if someone does not use it, he is still far from a real pro. The guy noticed that the girl had used magic on him, but seeing no changes, he assumed that it was some kind of healing magic or enhancement. The girl explained that it was speed magic. However, the guy did not feel that he himself began to move faster. But then he realized with delight that her magic had not sped up his running, but the speed of his spell. The girl modestly said that her magic was not that important, but the boy vigorously objected to her. He explained that he had always been the one to buff characters and knew how important speed was in battle, so her magic was incredibly cool. The young man enthusiastically called her magic the most important. The second young man agreed with him, confirming that the magic was strong. It is reported that such unique magic can become the core of protection, and the Count will be willing to pay 50 times more for it than for an ordinary maid. The old man noticed how many children with magic there were this year. At that moment, the second youth called out to Arad. A girl approached them, whom the guy recognized as Arya. She greeted him and he responded shyly. The boy asked why she was there. Arya explained that her grandfather had sent her to deliver something to Sir Burton. He joked that she looked so cute, as if she had come to see him. The girl blushed deeply and the guy was surprised, assuming that he had guessed correctly. The protagonist asked her if she was okay. She, embarrassed, demanded that he tell her who the other girl was. The boy explained that she worked here as a maid. It was her birthday today and she had received magic, so everyone had gathered to discuss it. Arya asked the maid's name, and she sheepishly introduced herself as Clax. She was excited that Mistress Arya had spoken to her, and said that she had seen her at the party. The maid added that she was very brave and beautiful. In response, Arya suggested that they train together since they shared magic. The guy enthusiastically supported the idea, saying that Arya was more experienced and would be able to set an example, becoming Clax's senior in magic. The girls thought about this phrase. The adults watched with interest to see what would come of it. The boy encouraged the maid, who gratefully agreed, promising to try. The young man thought that the girl was very kind and liked to be praised for her efforts. He also noted that she was, after all, an aristocrat. The courtyard of the estate is shown, and the guy thought that even the title of her family comes from ancient magic. Arad and asked him who he would choose. The man said that it was never too late to learn to be more aristocratic. Another girl noticed that he was very mature for his age. Burton approached them, noting that they were having fun. Those present greeted him. He wished Clax a good job and told Arad to get ready and said that he had received permission. The protagonist is happy that he is going to the place of the meteorite strike. He wonders if Arya can go with them because for this he needs the king's permission. The man reassured him, explaining that their families had known each other for a long time and that their position protected the inheritance. The children did not understand what he was talking about. The Count asked the girl to tell the hero about her title, Mana Healer. The guy suggested that it might be magic that restores mana. The young man thought that there were few ways to restore mana in games, so ancient magic was very rare. At this time, the adult asked if he understood now. The character asked the child if she was still training and advised her not to overexert herself. She replied that the head maid had given her the day off. The girls yawned tiredly, thinking about the words of encouragement. Clax recalled the wish to work hard. Sir Burton asked Arad to explain titles to Arya while they were riding in the carriage. The guy began the explanation by reminding her that her family title was Mana Healer and asked if she knew what the Count's title was. The girl correctly named the Count's title Meteor Strike. The protagonist confirmed and explained that the titles come from the names of ancient magic. He specified that it was cool but now lost magic. The Count confirmed that this was true. She assumed that this ancient magic was related to the place they were going to. The boy confirmed that their destination was related to the meteor strike. The aristocrat was surprised and wanted to ask her grandfather if there was a place connected to their magic. The young man thought that she had not even thought about whether she could use it herself. The hero remembered that the Count had also asked him how he knew about her, although he had not mentioned her. He thought that in their world, magic was considered a divine gift. The guy was fired up with the otaku dream of getting this enhancement, since they were going to such a place. The character turned to Sir Burton, remembering something. He asked the Count if he knew about the magic of resurrecting the dead. The man replied that it was the Duke's title. The young man realized that the Duke was higher in rank than the Count. He immediately asked if there was a place related to resurrection magic. The gentleman replied that there was no such place, and he explained that the duchy united several counties and, accordingly, the dukes did not rule their territories directly. The boy wondered why he had found a fragment of resurrection magic in the forest. At that moment, Arya suddenly remembered that she had learned a new skill. She said she had almost forgotten that it was the new skill that had brought her to them in the first place. Arad doubted her story about the mission. She asked Sir Burton for permission to show her something, and he agreed, suggesting that they rest. When she tried to do something, there was a cracking sound. The boy was worried if everything was okay with her, and the Count noted that the skill seemed quite complex. He said that she had already tried 10 times, and if she continued like this, the magic would be interrupted. The girl, although tired, confidently answered that now everything would work out. The heroine happily announced that she had succeeded and showed a small bird made of flame. The Count enthusiastically called it an excellent bird made of a fireball, and the guy was shocked. The boy was very impressed, thinking how it was possible to create something tangible from formless flames. He noted that, unlike him, Arya only uses fire magic, and this inspired him. The main character thought that only a child could have such flexible thinking. And I also realized that, even if you have an idea, you need to put in a lot of effort to make it a reality. The young man said it was cool and impressive, as he expected. The girl looked very pleased with his praise. The Count praised her, saying that she had done well and that few mages could control magic so well. He suggested that her grandfather Louis would be delighted. The girl sheepishly admitted that she hadn't told her grandfather about it yet. She decided that she would show him her new skill when she got home. The gentleman laughed at her confusion. Then he asked with interest if she could make a bird fly, to which she confidently replied, yes. The bird flew a little and turned into smoke, which confused Arya. Sir Burton noted that it didn't seem to have much firepower and asked if everything was okay. The hero thought it was normal, explaining that a flying firebird was more shocking than a simple fireball. The girl and the Count agreed with his opinion. He thought that, as the Count had said, the bird had little power compared to a normal fireball. It was enough to frighten the enemy and set the grass on fire, but in a real battle, power was important. The character scolded himself for thinking that appearance or power alone was everything. He realized that if he focused on knowledge, he would limit himself in his actions. The nobleman asked Arya to teach him the same, since it was not right to think that strength and appearance could not coexist. She happily agreed, but warned that it was very difficult. The magician explained that if you imagine water or sand in your palm, it will be easier to control magic. The girl understood his idea, and he decided to try. The result was huge, which surprised Arya. The guy himself was shocked. How could it be done all at once? And the Count chuckled with interest. The gentleman laughed, called it wonderful, and advised her not to stop there. The boy thought that he still needed to train, and at that time he did not suspect that Clax's life was in danger. Arya noted with delight that the ice figures were very funny, and the Count praised them, calling them very skillful. The boy thought that it was dangerous to do this in a carriage, and that shaping ice was much more difficult than shaping fire. The girl said that if you suddenly can't adapt, you just need to imagine a simpler form. She shared that her teacher told her to imagine a bird made of paper. The boy realized that it was essentially like origami. He thought he could do something himself. He had an idea, and he didn't care if it was a cheat. The protagonist thought that knowing how to use Arya's firebird, he could deal damage, but now it would be difficult to do so openly. The young man suggested that it was possible to use invisibility, first creating a fireball, and then using it to turn it into a bird. The character remembered that he was thinking of disguising the new magic as a fireball, and that's a cool use of invisibility, but how to use two magics at once? It occurred to him that one could imagine a fireball in one hand and invisibility in the other. He suddenly fell down, and Arya asked him worriedly what was wrong. The Count explained that these were typical signs of magic exhaustion. The man explained that this happens when you use too much magic. He advised Arya to be careful and added that running out of magic is the worst thing that can happen. Sir Burton told the boy to be careful too. Arad apologized for making him worry. He wondered if this meant that he simply didn't have enough mana, and that it was impossible to use two magics at the same time. The protagonist was in despair at the thought that if this was so, then his perfect plan would collapse. But the Count said there was something beautiful about it. For a second, until the boy ran out of strength, a beautiful firebird appeared. The Lord warned Arad to refrain from reckless actions until his body could keep up with the magic. The boy agreed, deciding not to make the Count worry and realizing that depletion of magic is a terrible thing. Arya asked him not to twitch. When they arrived at the place, the girl remarked with delight how beautiful it was around. The guy was also amazed by the view of the blue lake. He noted that it looked more like paint than a simple reflection and asked the Count if this place was connected with a meteorite strike. The Count pointed to the island, noticing. Arya suggested going there, and the guy enthusiastically agreed. The young man eagerly asked what awaited them, ruins, treasures, or a dungeon. However, Sir Burton replied that there was nothing on the island except grass. The boy did not believe that there was nothing in the place connected with ancient magic. He could not shake off the feeling that something was wrong there. Suddenly, the girl screamed, saying that the statue seemed to have moved. When the boy asked again, she pointed at it, shouting for him to look. The heroes cried out in surprise that it was magic, seeing how the statue was enveloped in a dark substance. The guy was in complete shock from what was happening and couldn't believe his eyes. Realizing the danger, the Count shouted for them to run, leaving Arad in shock. Sir Burton shouted that he was not weak and was not going to give up. Having come to their senses, the heroes asked each other how they were feeling. The Count replied that it was nothing serious, but his appearance said otherwise. He noted that the statues had used magic, and now they were all looking in their direction, concluding that this was the meteor strike. It is reported that he has never heard of such a thing. They assumed that they were aiming at the bridge, and it seems to be intact. It is said that a gazebo built by someone's family when they were given this land was blown away by the gale. The guy suggested that this bridge and the moving statues constituted a place associated with magic. The gentleman explained that the reason why the bridge has a zigzag shape has long remained a mystery. Arad thought it was definitely a strange construction and didn't understand why the bridge had to be made so inconvenient. Sir Burton said that there were many hypotheses, for example, that it was built this way to stop the undead monsters that only move straight. The main character thought that these were not monsters, but some kind of scary stories for the night. He admitted that he never understood why this place was associated with ancient magic, and suggested that it could all be a trap. The boy realized that crossing such a bridge under a hail of meteor strikes was a mortal risk, and the bridge itself was an effective safety measure. The Count decided that was enough for today. He said that they needed to explore the area more after what had happened. The man added that they did not know whether the island was safe and suggested that they return to the estate as soon as possible. The heroine thought that you can't just go with children to a place where you don't know what to expect, and that the main thing now is to get out of here. The Count asked Arad if he would help Arya. He asked if he thought it was his duty as a man to protect the girl, even at the risk of his life. Sir Burton praised him and added that if anything happened to his friend's granddaughter, he would have no way of justifying it. The young man wondered why he was talking about this now, when it would be better to think about how to get out of here. The man grabbed the children and said that he was counting on him, which left him puzzled. The boy was shocked that the Count had abandoned them, but he understood that this way they would cross the lake faster and avoid the meteorite strike. While in flight, he shouted at Arya to hold on. The girl was in a panic and did not know what to do. He remembered the Count's words about a man's duty to protect a girl, even at the risk of his life. The guy understood everything and made a decision. The protagonist thought that he was taking their landing upon himself, preparing to use magic. Arad created an ice slide for a safe landing. He was very pleased with the result, and Arya and the Count's companions were amazed. The Count's companions noted that the icy slope was too easy compared to the girl's firebird. It was also said that without the Lord, they would have to cross the dangerous bridge again. He thought that he was not so simple either and wondered if he could use magic. Sir Burton thanked the young man for saving Arya. The Count laughed that his back was seized by the sudden movements. The hero thought it was like a light jog. The man noticed that the boy's magic had been restored and that he had surprised him. He said that he had actually planned to let his companions help and had not expected him to do such a thing. The young man realized that at that moment the Count's companions were ready to repel the attack. The character decided that it didn't matter now, since all the targets, he ordered to leave because it was unknown what else could happen. As he left, he could not understand what had happened. The young man was sure that at that moment he had definitely seen a fragment of ancient magic in the sky. At the estate they were met by a maid who informed them that something had happened, the Clax had fallen. The maid reported with horror that she was now in a life-threatening condition, which left the children in shock. Upon hearing the news, Arad immediately rushed to Clax. The other adventurers gathered near her room. They saw the hero running towards them. The boy asked about his friend's condition. As soon as they told him that she was at the doctor's, he wanted to run to her right away, but he was stopped. Arad looked at his comrades in surprise. The hero was told that it was better for him not to see what happened to the girl. The boy was scared, thinking that his friend might be undead, but he was convinced otherwise. One of the adventurers still believed that it would be better for Arad to see what state Clax was in, but his friend did not appreciate the proposal. The guy added that the boy also sometimes acted recklessly, so he should know what happens if he crosses the border of his mana. In the end, Arad was released. He just wanted to go to the girl, but Arya beat him to it. She just ran into the room. The guys didn't even have time to say anything to her. Following her, they stopped. The daughter of the Louis family fell to the floor in fear. In front of them, on the bed, lay Clax's body. It seemed to be decomposing. Arad looked questioningly at the adventurer, who told him that the girl had used up all her mana. The hero was told that symptoms of mana depletion can have different levels. All magic users experience dizziness and loss of consciousness at least once. If a person continues to use magic in this state and even goes beyond its limits, the mana will not be able to recover naturally. Arad asked what ultimately happens to the magician. The adventurers turned away. They could not answer. Arya couldn't wait any longer and asked again, screaming. A familiar woman entered the room and replied that the mage would die in that case. The heroes looked at Clax with concern. When they got out, Arya said they had to do something. One of the Little Miss's defenders said that unlike physical strength, magical strength can only be replenished naturally. He added that there was nothing they could do. The assistant felt sorry for her, and blamed herself for not looking after the girl well. She added that Arya herself was just as impetuous and reckless. Arad believed that the fault lay with him, because he knew that Clax wanted to live up to his expectations and continued practicing magic without rest. The boy thought that he had brought her to this state. The hero thoughtfully said that Clax was dying because she had lost a lot of mana and could not restore it. He came to the conclusion that if her magic returned to a state of restoration, she would be saved. His comrades confirmed this, but there was one nuance. There was no hope for her natural recovery, so everything depended on her life force. The girl was in a very serious condition. Suddenly, Arad shouted Arya's name as if an idea had struck him. He remembered about the mana healer, an ancient magic that restores mana. Because the boy screamed sharply, the girl did not understand what he was getting at. The hero asked Arya to take him to the place with the mana healer and explain that he wanted to save Clax. So the boys set off in a carriage late at night. After a while they arrived at the appointed place. There they met Freya. She was surprised that the Little Miss had already returned. Seeing Arad, the girl asked what he was doing there. The girl, not paying attention to the questions, asked if the grandfather was at home. Not understanding anything, Freya answered that the gentleman was in the office. She was surprised that Craig was not near the children. The heroes headed straight to their grandfather's office. Arya walked confidently down the corridor, and Arad followed her awkwardly. The maids greeted the girl and looked at the boy with surprise. Approaching the office, the girl opened the doors so wide that they hit the wall. The noise startled the grandfather. He was sitting at the table and working when his granddaughter suddenly came to him. The man jumped up and asked what had happened. Arya immediately asked to be taken to the place spoken with the magic of the mana healer. Not understanding anything, the man calmly approached the girl and asked why she needed this. The granddaughter answered that she would explain everything later. She said it was important, so they had to hurry. Grandpa still couldn't understand what was going on. Arad noted that he wouldn't agree so easily. The hero remembered the words of Count Burton that the place connected with magic was given to him by the royal family. This meant that it was not easy to get there. Meanwhile, the grandfather tried to calm his granddaughter. The boy suggested that Arya explain everything to him herself, but the girl quickly whispered that he should not worry and trust her, because she knew her grandfather better. The friend spoke quietly and quickly that although she was no longer a child, in order to convince her grandfather, she needed to use a spell that she had sworn before her father not to use. However, for Clax's sake, she was ready. Arad was surprised, because he thought that the girl could only use a fireball. He bet that Arya was using something related to psychological manipulation or hypnosis. However, everything was much simpler. Arya approached her grandfather and declared that because the old man did not understand anything, she would never speak to him again. Arad realized that this was the very spell she was talking about. He was extremely surprised. The granddaughter's words struck the grandfather's heart, and he even fell to his knees in pain. The boy understood that Arya had managed to hit him where it hurt most. The old man looked at his granddaughter, pleading for her to take back her words. The girl turned away, showing that she was not joking. Arad was extremely surprised by his friend's behavior. Grandfather slowly stood up and rang the bell. The butler came immediately. He was ordered to prepare the fastest carriage as quickly as possible. The servant accepted the order and then, seeing Arya's cunning face, immediately understood who had influenced the master so much. He sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose tiredly. Grandfather was shaking all over. He approached the girl and said that transport would be ready soon. Arya immediately smiled and said that her grandfather was the best in the world. The old man's face immediately lit up. He stroked his little relative's head. Watching such a picture, the hero was speechless. On the way, already in the carriage, the boys told Freya everything. She agreed that Clax the mana healer will save. It was their only solution. She was asked if she knew anything about this magic. The girl replied that while working for the Count, she learned about titles and various information. Arya told her friend that Freya was the best among her grandfather's mages. The boy did not know about this, so it amazed him. He asked the girl if she had been at the celebration at Count Burton's. She was pleasantly surprised that she was remembered despite the fact that all attention was focused on Arad. The boy laughed awkwardly and apologized. Recalling the events of the event, Freya added that things were not easy for him after that, because Arya began to confront him. The girl became embarrassed and reproachfully cried out the girl's name. The magician asked if the guys were sure that they did not want to stop somewhere to rest, because they had been on the road since yesterday. The mana healer as soon as possible. The girl asked what they would do next. Freya added that although the ancient magic should extract exhaustion, she was not sure that it could be used. Even though Freya herself had studied a lot about ancient magic, even she did not know how to master it. Arad replied that they could only go and try. Meanwhile, he mentally understood that he could not tell the whole truth. The heroes knew they had no choice, as only a mana healer could save Clax. Suddenly, Arya asked the boy what they should do if the place with the mana healer was similar to the place associated with the meteor strike. Clax with them so that they could immediately use the statue's magic on her. Arad admitted that he had thought about it too, and reminded them of the condition their friend was in, which meant that she would not be able to survive such a long journey. Freya agreed with this. She added that it all depended on how severe the symptoms of exhaustion were. It was unlikely, but there was a chance that the mage's body could disintegrate like a wilted flower if he moved incorrectly. Hearing this, Arya became worried. Freya asked Arad how he came up with the idea to use the mana healer. The boy thought for a second and told the latest events with him, Arya and the Count. He suggested that the statues they had seen in the hall might have been guarding something. Freya said it was an interesting guess, because logically statues that function for decades must have been erected for a specific purpose. Otherwise, there would be no point in erecting something like that where there is nothing. It was clear to the boys that the golems that used ancient magic as a reaction were placed there for a reason, so Arya thought that there might be similar statues in the place with the mana healer. Freya winked, saying that she had heard them. She knew that they were heading there because they were sure that there would be salvation for the Clax. The children looked at each other and nodded. After a while, when the sun was setting behind the horizon and the parrots gathered together to watch the heroes, the boys arrived at the appointed place. They were standing on a huge bridge. While Freya was arguing everything around, Arya pulled a rod somewhere. Looking at the statue towering over the heroes, Freya asked again if the golems could move and release ancient magic. Arad replied that although these looked different, there was no doubt that they were the same. The girl said she would go ahead and check if everything was safe, but Arya didn't hear her anymore. She was already ahead of the boys, calling for them to hurry. Freya awkwardly admitted that sometimes she didn't notice what was happening around her. Lavushka noticed that the hero treated those around him like family, and she liked this trait in the boy. Arad informally responded positively to her and then corrected himself. The heroes walked further along the bridge, closer to the statues. Above them hung huge structures on which curious parrots sat. The golem, noticing the people, turned its head in their direction. The boys noticed this immediately and stopped. Freya stood forward, covering the children with her body. A light ball came out of the statue, reaching for the girl. It penetrated her body and the light illuminated Freya. Nothing happened to the girl. She realized that what had entered her was a mana healer. Arad asked if her mana had been restored. Freya answered positively. In addition, her mana was greater than usual. Arya ran up and asked if this would help Clax. The girl nodded. She still couldn't believe that there was a way to restore mana even though she had just tried it on herself. The girl clenched her fists in determination and said that now they needed to find a way to take the magic with them. Freya wondered why the golems were suddenly moving. Arya asked her to think better of their current task. The girl said that these things could be connected, although they had no clear evidence for this. Arad began to think. In both places there was nothing but moving golems, but there had to be something that triggered their mechanism. The boy looked up and saw flying magic. The hero assumed that the thing the statues were protecting so strongly must be connected to ancient magic. Arad thought that what he was seeing was it. He was sure that there must be a way to get it. The boy thought that if this were a game, they would have to complete some mission or pass a test. Suddenly Freya exclaimed that the golems were advancing. The statues raised their hands. They opened their mouths, and the ancient magic that had entered Freya earlier began to come out. It flew everywhere. The girl said that it was as if they were at a sale of ancient magic. Arya added that they should have taken Clax with them after all. Meanwhile, Arad was thinking frantically. When he realized what was happening, he exclaimed that the girls, on the contrary, should avoid magic. He saw several of these balls flying at Freya, so he grabbed her and praised her on the ground. The magic hit the parrot instead of the person. It immediately lit up. The girl was a little hurt from the sudden fall. She asked why Arad did it. Arya didn't understand anything either. Afterwards, they saw the parrot, which had been previously penetrated by the mana healer, inflate and explode. The heroes froze in shock and fear. The boys watched as only a feather and bloody traces remained of the bird. Arad noticed that the statues were shooting the mana healer down again and warned his comrades. The golems opened their mouths and absorbed the energy, then released glowing balls. The heroes began to run away. Arad understood that in such conditions he would not be able to collect the fragments. If the statues pinned them down on the bridge, they would not be able to escape. Suddenly, a ball appeared in front of Arya. She stopped abruptly, to which the boy screamed, but she continued to run. He said that nothing would happen to her if the magic hit her once. Finally, the heroes were able to cross the long bridge. The parrots also flew away from the ill-fated place. Exhaling, Freya thanked Arad for saving them. The boy told an excerpt from a book about how even medicine can become poisoned if you overdo it. The girl jokingly called him a bookworm. Arad scratched his head awkwardly because he knew that he mostly read manga in his past life. The hero remembered that over-recovery was the same as damage. Arya began to worry that the mana healer would only make things worse for Clax. Arad denied this with a smile. Freya explained to the girl that ancient magic could not give more mana than the one who would use it. They would have to deal with the golems later. Arya admitted that their mission was more difficult than she thought. The hero suggested that they would have to pass some kind of test. The girl asked if that meant that this place with magic was testing them. Freya noticed that her student had matured since their last meeting. The girl was pleased to hear this. The girl wished the master would see his daughter like this. Otherwise, Count Louis will be beside himself. Arya brought the boys back to their conversation about the test. She asked what it could be. The hero threw up his hands. He couldn't even imagine what they wanted from them. Freya wanted to examine these golems, but now they couldn't even approach them. Arad was dissatisfied that he could not think of anything. He thought that he would calmly collect the fragments, but the boy forgot what he had with ancient magic, which can be unpredictable. Meanwhile, Arya was confused. She heard someone talking to her. The voice said that going directly was not an option for the guys, and the roundabout ways had a high level of difficulty. The girl asked out loud who it was. Freya and Arad turned their attention to her. They asked what was happening to her. Arya asked if they heard a voice, but her comrades did not understand what she was talking about. Someone asked the girl if she needed power. Arya didn't answer, not understanding anything. Then a voice sounded right in her head and asked again if she needed power. Something took over the girl's body and she walked forward along the bridge towards the statues. Arad screamed for her to stop. He wanted to run after his friend, but Freya stopped him. She pointed her finger and said that the place where the golem stood had changed. The statues bowed and hid their faces. When Arya came closer to them, a bright light illuminated everything around. The guys even had to cover themselves with their hands to avoid going blind. When it all stopped, they saw Arya start to disappear into thin air right in front of them. A minute later, she was gone completely. When Arya came to, she found herself in some kind of weightless position. She looked around, looking for her comrades, but there was no one near her. The girl tried to use her firepower, but nothing worked. The voice spoke to her again. It asked if she needed power. The girl thought about it and cried out that she needed it. The interlocutor said that then Arya must choose. 3 copies of herself appeared in front of her. The girl was surprised to see herself in 3 versions. Finally, the voice promised that it would give her the power she wanted. One version greeted her. She assumed that Arya did not remember her, and she was right. Then she introduced herself as the power of the fireball. Seeing Arya's bewilderment, the girl decided to show. A ball appeared in her hands, and from it, a bird. It flew up and shone. The version exhaled and praised herself for trying well. She said that she was the result of Arya's efforts. Her strength was in her diligence and determination. The other version also spoke up. She reminded that Arya also learned from Freya. She raised her hand, from which a huge firebird flew out, which was the girl. She added that if you change the weak fireball, you will get the strongest firebird. The version was Arya's wishes. The version knew that she had someone Arya looked up to and followed, so she offered her power to grant her wishes. However, Arya walked past her to the third version. She asked her name. The girl opened her palms and showed glowing orbs. She introduced herself as the ancient magic of the mana healer. Hearing this, Arya took her hands and smiled with relief. Now she can finally save Clax. The other forces could not resist the desires of the mistress and smiled. A voice sounded. He said that they were of the same blood, so he knew what her heart wanted. Everything shone. Meanwhile, the boys didn't know what to do, because Arya had disappeared so suddenly. Suddenly, the girl herself approached them. They didn't understand what exactly had happened, because a second ago their friend had disappeared into thin air and then immediately appeared. Without explaining anything, Arya said that she had taken possession of ancient magic and showed it. On her palms appeared exactly like a mana healer's ball. Arad couldn't believe it. Freya said that they were very surprised when she disappeared. The girl smiled smugly and said that there was something else she wanted to show her friends. After whispering a spell, a fireball appeared on her hands. The boys watched attentively. Arya told them to watch and raised her hand to the sky and launched a large firebird. Arad and Freya's mouths dropped open in surprise. The girl asked how the girl could control her magic, and the boy did not know that this was his friend's ability. Arya answered that she had passed the test. She said that she had been voiced by feelings and had taken over everything. However, no one understood what she meant. Freya thought about it. To her, getting a mana healer and increasing her ancient magic at the same time sounded interesting. She asked what exactly Arya had done. The girl waved her hands and said that they didn't have time for that because they needed to save Clax as soon as possible. Freya agreed with her. At that moment, Arya noticed that her friend was thinking about something. Looking at the bridge, he was thinking that there must be another way to obtain ancient magic. The boy was wondering what would happen if the second golem started moving too. Suddenly, he shouted that he had to believe something and asked his comrades to stay put. The hero ran back across the bridge to the statues. Finally, he began to understand what exactly the golems wanted to eliminate. Arad realized that he was the one who had activated the ancient guardians. As the boy approached, one of the statues began to move and glow. He had deliberately approached them to activate their functions. Mana Healer was the ancient magic he needed for Arya and for Clax. He was going to get it anyway. Even if the action didn't raise the norm, Arad would just use it again. The balls started to approach him. He didn't let them get to him, trapping the magic in his palms. Due to the contact of fire magic and Mana Healer, a huge bird appeared, towering over the area of the bridge and golems. The light reflected in the eyes of Arya, who was watching the event. Although Arad was glad that he had succeeded in his plan, he understood that if he relaxed his body for a moment, he would simply dissolve in his own magic. Arya began to worry about her friend. Freya thoughtfully said that what they had seen earlier was just a joke. The girl did not understand what she meant. The girl reminded that Arad had a fireball. She said that it took a lot of mana to turn the ball into a firebird, and asked if the girl understood it now. Arya remembered the state Arad was in after using such magic. She said that the boy usually lacked mana, which is why nothing worked, but now with the Mana Healer, everything worked out. Freya winked, indicating that the girl was right. She checked that it would be difficult for Arad to control one fireball. The girl agreed with her. At this time, the hero continued to fight with his magic. After a while, a large inscription appeared in front of him. It said that the fragment of the ancient magic of the Mana Healer had reached its peak. The mastery had been completed. It was evening when Arad finally returned to his comrades. Arya immediately ran to him and began examining him. She asked if he was okay and if her friend was hurt. The boy said with a smile that he was fine. The girl looked at her hero with admiration. Freya noticed this look and couldn't help but giggle. Arya immediately changed her tone and angrily told Arad that he had scared them with his actions. The girl suddenly burst into tears. She sadly said that now he too had begun to act recklessly. Seeing her in such a mood, Arad immediately asked for forgiveness. Arya asked if he was really becoming distracted. The boy did not answer. Freya thought as she watched the boys. She agreed with Arya. Arad's actions were reckless, which could lead him to terrible events. The girl assumed that it might have been a child's beginning, but she did not think the boy was so young as not to understand the danger. Arad bowed and apologized for making them worry. The boys accepted his apology. Freya asked if he wanted it out of curiosity. The boy did not understand why she asked such a question. Arya said that they needed to get home quickly to help Clax. As he left, Arad took one last look at the place where they had found the mana healer. He couldn't quite understand if the golems were reacting to him like that only because he was reincarnated. The carriage sped along the road back to the castle. Looking out the window, Arya asked Freya how long it would take them to get to Sir Burton's estate. The girl replied that they should be there by that night. The girl asked if they could go even faster. Freya replied that they could, but it would be quite dangerous because the high-speed carriages were not that strong. Arya wanted to insist on it. She was overcome with fear and transfusion for Clax, and Arad saw it. He bowed and asked Freya to speed up too. The boy said that they had finally got hold of the mana healer, and it would be a shame if they didn't make it. The boy knew it might be dangerous, but it would get them back sooner. Freya understood his request in her own way, winking if this was another necessary reckless thing Arad usually did. After a conversation with the coachman, Freya warned the children to hold on tightly to something because they would be shaken. The girl immediately grabbed Arad's hand. Looking out the carriage window, the boy noticed something strange. Freya asked if something was happening. The hero said that the road in front of them was glowing. The girl also looked out the window. However, neither she nor Arya saw anything but darkness. The boy was surprised that he was the only one who saw fragments of magic on the road. Suddenly, memories of the conversation with Count Burton and the butler began to surface in his head. He wanted to ask to stop the carriage, but he did not have time. The transport seemed to have hit something and lost control. The carriage could have gone off the road and turned over on its side along with the heroes. Freya exhaled as she stepped out of the carriage. The driver called the girl worriedly. She reported that they were all right. The mage also asked if the man was safe. Despite his fear, he was fine, as were the horses. Arad immediately ran towards the glowing fragments. They were everywhere. The boy touched them. Although they looked flat, they fell hollow. Freya approached the hero and asked if it was hidden magic. She added that it was rather careless to leave fragments in such a place. The boy asked if this happened often. The girl answered positively. Freya pointed to the carriage and reminded them that they had worse things to do. Now they couldn't leave because of one broken wheel. Meanwhile, the coachman calmed Arya, who blamed herself for what was happening. Out of desperation, Freya screamed that she should have learned to ride. The boy stood up and said that everything was fine. He shook himself off and asked to rely on him. The girl followed Arad and asked what he was going to do. The boy called Arya. She ran up to him with tears in her eyes. The hero assured her that everything would be fine. Approaching the carriage, Arad began to think about where to start. In the end, he did a magical repair of the carriage. The boy took out all the broken parts of the wheels and repaired them with ice magic. Because the garden ice is fragile, rags were used as a base. For safety, he also removed the broken windows. Now, instead of a broken wheel, there was an ice disc. Arya asked if they could go now. The driver said they could leave right away. Arad added that the axle was still intact, so it should last them for a while. Freya learned that the boy could use ice magic too. As the horses raced along the road, Arad supported the ice wheel with his magic. Thanks to the smooth road, the boy believed that he could hold out until Count Burton's estate. Arya looked out of the carriage and asked the boy who was sitting next to the coachman if she could help him with anything. The hero told her to rest instead. The girl was worried about Arad's mana. The boy reminded her that she should hold back her magic to save Clax. Arya wanted to insist, but Freya stopped her. She said that they had a more important task. The girl reminded that Arya's main task was to fully recover. The girl immediately sat down obediently. Seeing how worried his friend was, Arad thought that unnecessary thoughts would only make her more tired. As soon as they arrived, Arya and the boys jumped out of the carriage and rushed to the estate where they met the Count. He was sitting in the corridor. The man stood up as the girl ran up to him. She didn't know where to start, so the Count spoke first. He told them to go quickly to Clax. Seeing Arya rushing down the corridor to her friend's room, Count Burton assumed that the guys had succeeded. Arad confirmed this. Watching the thoughtful man, the hero was surprised that the Count understood from just one look at Arya that they were able to get what they needed. Burton even learned that they had returned with a mana healer, a magic that had been lost long ago. Once again, Arad was convinced of how insightful the Count was. At that moment, the man told the boy to follow Arya, which the hero did. Clax's room, and saw the adventurers who were still guarding his friend. The boy asked how the girl was feeling. The boys were extremely surprised to see ancient magic. He looked with them into the room where Arya was already standing and trying to heal Clax. She stood by the bed and focused all her magic on restoring Clax's mana. This was Arya's new magic. After some time, the girl saw how her friend's wounds began to heal rapidly, and soon they were not visible. Arya was happy about this, but suddenly her head began to spin and she began to fall. However, Arad caught her. He asked if she was okay. The girl became embarrassed and continued the treatment. She replied that she was fine. The hero noticed that Clax was starting to acquire a healthy skin tone and Arya's hands were shaking. He knew his friend was already starting to weaken. The boy glanced at the guys standing near the door to the team and thought that they wouldn't see what he was doing. Arad used his magic behind Arya to give her strength. He felt a new surge of magic. The girl screamed that she could still continue. In the end, Arad understood that it was ineffective because mana for magic and mana for recovery are not the same thing. The hero realized this when he was repairing the carriage. It seemed to him that by using 1 unit of mana, about 8/10 were restored. In this way, he was able to heal himself, but when the mana became less, it could not be used as a perpetual motion machine. The same thing happened with the recovery of another person. This meant that the recovery from Arad to Arya, and from Army to Clax, only lost mana, so it was not profitable for him to help Arya. But despite everything, the hero wanted to help and support. It was not about the efficiency and theories themselves, but about the fact that Arya wanted to help Clax. After Arya's efforts to heal her friend, Clax finally came to her senses. She opened her eyes and looked at the boys. Arya didn't wait and immediately hugged the maid. The girl didn't understand the reason for such an attitude and became embarrassed. Little Miss was glad that Clax finally opened her eyes. Arad asked how she felt. The girl asked if she had done something wrong. Arya explained that she had used too much mana and fainted. Arad explained that mana depletion was a kind of illness and added that she didn't have to worry now. Arya said that she had already restored her mana well. Clax was surprised. Miss said that she had used amazing mana healer magic. The little maid apologized for causing them so much trouble. Arad interrupted her. He told Clax that Miss Arya would be pleased to hear thanks instead of an apology. The girl smiled and thanked Arya. Little Miss replied that she had to do it as her senior in magic. Freya ran up to Arya and hugged her. She was her student's darling. Clax was pleased to see such a picture and feel that she was dear to someone. She looked at Arad and thanked him too. Sitting on the bed, Clax listened to her feelings. She could actually feel Arya's warm mana inside her. The next morning, healthy and full of energy, Clax dressed in her room while the birds chirped outside. Although the girl already felt well, the illness still made itself felt. Her hands were shaking. She sneezed when Arya suddenly walked into the room. Hearing the sneeze, the girl understood everything. Clax asked the little miss if she had done something wrong. Arya approached the maid and said that she was still sick, so she should rest more. Clax wanted to start talking about the work that awaited her, but the stern face of the little miss stopped her. Clax's room and saw his friends. Louise's daughter immediately began to complain about the maid for wanting to go to work after such a serious illness. Clax blushed at this and turned away. Arad agreed with Arya. He said that she should still be more careful. The girl started talking about work, but Miss interrupted her and reminded her that recovery was her top priority right now. The hero mentally noted that Arya was acting like an older sister. Arad recalled that even the head maid had told Clax to rest. Little Miss had pushed the girl to the bed and laid her under the covers, telling her to gather her strength. However, on the other hand, the hero understood Clax. Remembering his past life, he agreed that it was hard for a person to rest when his work was lying next to him. After thinking for a while, he came up with an idea on how to solve the problem of the hard-working maid. After some time, the boys arrived where Arad wanted to take them. He helped Clax get out of the carriage while she looked around. They were standing in the courtyard of Arad's house. Arya was happy to introduce it to Clax, and the hero thought it was an ordinary apartment building. Hearing that they were near Arad's house, Clax began to examine everything carefully. The boy deliberately took the girl outside, who was constantly in maid mode in the estate. He wanted her to get some fresh air. However, the hero did not think that the Count and the butler would let them go so easily. Arad went to her door and opened it. He notified the household of his arrival, but no one answered. The boy was surprised that there was no one in the house. He felt sorry, because he wanted to introduce everyone to each other. Arad decided to come back later. He left the house and approached the girls, apologizing. Noticing that Clax wanted to say something, the boy listened to him shoot at her. The girl asked if she could help with anything. Hearing Clax talking about work again, Arya said with displeasure that she didn't have to work. Arad laughed. He asked if the girls wanted to go for a walk with him. They walked through the forest. Along the way, the boy showed them various plants. When he pulled out a herb, Arya asked what it was. Arad replied that it was medicinal herbs. It was just now the growing season. He added that his main job was collecting and selling such herbs. The boy said that he would collect them during the walk, and added that the girls should not lag behind him. Arad also suggested that they collect plants if they saw similar ones. That way, the boys could earn some good money. The walk continued. Arad no longer collected herbs but walked relaxedly with his hands behind his head, while Clax diligently searched for and pulled out similar plants. Arya approached her friend and asked him why he had started all this. Arad explained with a smile that Clax was too serious. He understood that the girl would be better off if she did something, so he gave her such an easy job for her greater peace of mind. Arya thought about it and asked if nothing happened to Clax. The boy reassured her, saying that it was nothing to worry about. Their walk continued until they found a whole field of flowers, where the boys decided to take a break for a while. One of the flowers immediately ended up in the little maid's hair. Watching them, Arad thought that the girls were on a picnic. He was sitting on a log not far from them. The boy was glad that he had brought them to the forest, where they could calmly rest their souls. As they went further into the forest, they came across a bush with berries, which they immediately named and began to eat. While Clax carefully ate them, Arya could not bring herself to take the first bite. Suddenly, Arad heard someone growling not far from them. He immediately covered the girls with his body. A boar appeared in front of them. The hero warned the girls to be more careful. The boy mentally did not understand how they could have stumbled upon him when he was leading them, not along wild roads. Clax began to tremble with fear, while Arya tried to calm her down and encourage her. At that moment, the boar ran towards them. The boy wanted to use his magic to push his friends away, but the animal was already close. The hero grabbed the girls and fell to the side with them. The boar ran past them. Arad ran in the opposite direction to distract the wild animal. When the boar ran towards him and was very close, the boy wanted to use a fireball, but he did not even have time to cast a spell. He had to dodge the attack. For him, the main task was to protect his girlfriends. At that moment, Arya called Arad. Hearing the girl's voice, the boar switched its attention to her and rushed straight at Clax and Arya. Seeing and understanding the situation, Arad jumped up and ran towards the girls. He tried to overtake the animal. Suddenly, Clax pointed at Arya's hands, reminding her that she could use her magic. The girl's hands began to glow. Pointing them towards the enemy, the girl released a firebird that knocked the boar back. Arad was shocked by such power. After the animal was killed, the girls were happy about their rescue and victory. Arya and Arad thanked Clax for her help. The boy praised her for the good combination of their magic. The girl nodded. Looking at the boar's carcass, for which he would receive silver coins, the boy was glad that he would be able to earn some extra money. The maid was happy that she could at least help in some way. At that moment, Arya had an idea. She turned to her comrades and suggested creating a clan. They were confused as to what she was talking about. Little Miss explained that a clan is a team of famous mages who share the same goals. Together, they seek adventure. Arad compared it to a party in an RPG game or an adventurer's guild. The hero said that the three of them would be like a group of detectives. The girls didn't understand why he said that. Then the boy simply waved it off, saying that he just remembered something. Clax trembled and asked if they wanted to take her on the team too. Arya smiled and said yes. The girl began to worry even more. She couldn't imagine that such an ordinary maid could be in the clan with the little miss. Arya didn't understand what she meant. Seeing how the girl shrank and could not explain properly, Arad decided to help her a little. He said that Arya wanted to unite with Clax and not with anyone else. The friend agreed with this. The boy understood that he needed to talk to Clax more directly and openly. Seeing that the girl was thinking, Arad asked if she wanted to be with them. The girl nodded quickly. Arya beamed and clapped her hands. Now everything was decided. The boys only had to come up with a symbol from the clan. While Arya and Arad began to ponder, Clax also did not stand aside. After thinking for a while, she suggested the option with a bird. The guys did not understand the reason for such a choice. Then the girl said that Miss Arya had a beautiful firebird coming out, so she decided that such a symbol would suit their team. Remembering Arya's magic, Arad agreed that the girl's bird was beautiful. Hearing this, his friend blushed. She was pleased with the power of such words about her abilities. The boys agreed with the symbol in the form of a firebird. Now they needed a design. Arad, having torn off a small branch from a tree, suggested trying to draw it. In a few minutes, several design options for their symbol were drawn on the ground. However, they looked more like scribbles. When Arad saw his drawing, Arya laughed and said that the boy had no talent for drawing at all. The hero mentally noted that the girl didn't do well either. Arya added that she felt better knowing that her friend was at least somewhat weak. Arad explained that his design was based on a firebird and was inspired by the Japanese yatagarasu, which is a fairly old symbol. The girl did not listen to him. Saying that he was talking nonsense, Arya stood up and went to Clax. Seeing the drawing of the maid, she smiled widely and said that it was amazing. This attracted the hero's attention. He came up and was also surprised by the beauty of the design. The guys praised Clax and noted that she draws beautifully. The girl was surprised. The heroes immediately decided to use the maid's design as the main design for their symbol. Arya added that they could also use the icons for their clan. Little Miss said that Grandpa would help them with this. He would help them make them according to Clax's drawing. Arad immediately imagined how the old man would try to do everything in the best possible way for his granddaughter. The girl hurried the boys to the coachman. The boy stopped her. Arya did not understand what was going on. Arad reminded them that they had to sell the boar first. This was their first catch for the three of them. Looking at the carcass of the beast, Clax asked how they would take it to the market. The boy assured her that there was no problem. After some time, the body of the killed animal was encased in a cube of ice. The hero explained that this would allow the boar to slide on the grass. It was a great idea. Arad said that he would freeze the grass ahead and asked Arya to use mana healer. She was fine with it. As Arya left, she began discussing Arad's design for their symbol. She laughed and told Clax that she should have seen the hero's three-legged bird too. The boy was indignant and the maid giggled. Arriving at the city market, the boys approached the merchant. Arya greeted him and Arad defrosted the boar. After a successful sale, they received their first money as a team. Afterwards, the girls noticed a shop with interesting dishes. They leaned against the window and looked at the goods from the outside. Arya asked Arad if it was a knick-knack shop. He said that this was a master studio, not a store. However, he was also here for the first time. Arya asked why they came here. The boy said that they could make badges for the silver coin they got for the boar. He added that the coin was their joint trophy, so the hero wanted to keep it as a keepsake. Clax immediately agreed. The idea was wonderful. The girl turned to Arya, who stood silently. The boys waited for her answer. Arya smiled and answered that she completely agreed. The heroes entered the workshop, where the master himself was. They approached him and explained what exactly they wanted. Clax sat down at the table and began to draw the design of their badges on paper again. Having received payment, the master set to work. After some time, the guys received their long-awaited badges, which depicted the head of a firebird. Arad immediately noticed that although it was a cheap iron badge, it was of good quality. In addition, the work was done for only 1 silver coin. The boys said that they were lucky with the master, considering their prices for goods. Suddenly, Arya came back into the workshop and asked the guys to wait for her outside. A few minutes later, she came back out onto the street. Arad asked what was going on. The girl said that she was just thanking him on behalf of their entire clan. At that moment, the hero noticed that the master himself looked out of the door. She waved to them and told them to come see her again. The boys bowed to her. The new clan came out to the square. There, Arya continued to examine the badge, while Clax and Arad pinned it to their clothes. The hero asked if they liked it, to which the maid nodded. He looked at the little miss. She pinned the badge and answered positively. Pleased with her new purchase, Arya walked ahead, humming a song, the badge jingling in time with her steps. Clax and Arad followed her, smiling. Suddenly, the hero saw his older brother ahead. He also noticed his younger brother. Arad immediately noticed that Robin was drunk. The guy asked why the boy had returned home. The boy didn't have time to say anything when the elder began to reproach him for the fact that Arad was invited to his house by the head of the family himself, and he returned and was walking around the city with some children. Robin noticed the badge on his brother's clothes and reminded him that Arad was part of an aristocratic family and should have thermal connections. The younger one ironically noted that he had never been as good at drinking alcohol as the older one. As he left, Robin said that Arad could only have fun and advised him to follow his brother's example. Meanwhile, the hero wondered if he had ever seen the guy sober. Clax asked who it was. Arya quickly explained that it was Arad's older brother. The girl was surprised that the boy was not the only child in his family. The hero was surprised that the little miss remembered his brother. She replied that they had met a couple of days ago. Arad was somewhat glad that at least someone remembered his brother's name. Clax began to worry that she hadn't even introduced herself. The boy reassured her, saying that they would have time to meet again tomorrow. Watching Robin leave, Arad wondered if his elder was even capable of remembering the faces of those he met, since connections were important to an aristocrat. He sighed wearily and hoped that the boy's bad habit would someday be useful. The heroes continued their walk around the city. They met different people along the way. Someone was walking their dog or camel, and someone was returning from shopping. However, in the crowd of many strangers, Arad noticed a familiar face. He met a team of adventurers. Among them was a girl who had once helped the boy with one question. Arad immediately remembered her as well as she him. The girl greeted him and the hero in turn thanked her again for her help. The adventurer waved it off, saying that she had done nothing special, but the boy didn't think so. Of course, he couldn't find out any specific information about ancient magic, but he realized that ordinary magicians didn't know anything about it. The girls, not understanding who Arad was talking to, approached them. The hero told his comrades that he had met this team in the forest, who had helped him and treated him very kindly. The adventurer waved to the girls. The man noticed the boys had identical badges and asked if they were a team. Arya replied that they had recently formed a clan of the three of them. Another adventurer asked if they were all mages. For them, meeting three young magicians was a good sign. They jokingly suggested that thanks to this meeting, they could gain more magic. Having learned that her little friend was also a mage, the girl understood why he had asked her about ancient magic. She asked if Arad had learned anything about her. The boy wanted to somehow avoid this topic, but Arya got ahead of him and told him that she now possessed that very ancient magic. The hero, on the advice of Count Burton, did not want to tell everyone about it. However, Arad remembered that Freya also knew about ancient magic and thought that everything depended on the family. The boy began to reassure himself that the girl had not yet told him anything, but it was already too late. Arya demonstrated her power as a mana healer and restored the adventurer's strength. The girl asked what it was. With a smug smile, Arya replied that it was ancient magic. This was the first time the adventurer had encountered magic that could restore mana. Because the heroes gave birth in the middle of the city where there were many people, Arya's performance with the mana healer attracted attention, which Arad did not like. He changed the topic of conversation, asking if the team was going to fight monsters today. The girl replied that they had already returned from the battle and were going to exchange the crystals for a reward. While the adventurer was telling where they had hunted, the other members of the team were a little upset that their catch was not as big as usual. When the boys said goodbye to the team, Arya suggested that her new clan hunt monsters. Arad asked if they would go alone. The girl said that this would be their first task together. Arya's proposal threw Arad off his stride. The hero understood that he would have to go to the monsters with children, whom he would have to protect from danger. At that moment, he began to understand that the same Japanese man from his past life still lived inside him. Although he had lived in this world for 6 years, it was still only a fifth of the past, so Arad sometimes reminded himself that he was not a full-fledged resident. In this world, people are not treated like children just because of their age. No matter how small a person is, if they are independent, they will be treated like adults. However, the hero himself began working in this world as a child. For him, who grew up in a society with a childish age division, it was difficult to accept the new rules of the world after rebirth. Although Arad himself did not mind when people looked at him as an adult, he saw Arya and Clax as children. The boy looked thoughtfully at their clan badge. The girls asked what was wrong. He shook his head, saying that nothing important had happened. Arad mentally reminded himself that it was these children who had defeated that boar, thanks to which he could make badges with beautiful designs. The hero suggested that his team do another run-through in the forest before the real performance. It was important for them to prepare before the fight with real monsters. When the boys left the city and climbed to the clearing, Arad asked the girls if they were ready. They answered positively. Then the boy threw a stone, which, after hitting the ground, glowed. It was a special magic stone for training. Everything around it began to sparkle. The guys were worried, but they were ready for the fight. Suddenly, a rock flew towards them. Clax immediately used fast magic, and Arad used ice magic. He put his hands on the ground. Soon an ice wall rose up in front of them, which delayed the attack of the magic stone. However, due to the protection, it could not completely stop it. The wall cracked under the pressure and then completely collapsed. Arya released a firebird, which finally destroyed the stone and melted the ice wall. A puddle rejoiced in its place. The girl exclaimed that they had succeeded. Meanwhile, Arad thought. He explained the mechanism of his creation. It was a switch that was activated by throwing it into the ground. The boy thought that they should go into the forest and find a Boravaya, but it would be difficult for them to guess where exactly the animal was, so he made a model using magic. Arad mentally thought that if the ice block were a boar, then with such a combination they would be able to knock it down in a moment. Clax admired the counterwork of the little miss and the young gentleman. The girl ran up to the maid and said that she had helped them too. The hero knew that Clax had a quick and precise spell, which was the key to their combination. Arad looked at his reflection in the puddle and thought about the boar, but was distracted by Arya. She said that the three of them could defeat the monsters without any problems. The boy understood where the conversation was going and nodded. He said that they would go after the monsters tomorrow after they had restored their mana. Arad thought it was a great chance. If they all put in the effort, it would be a big step towards his independence and the girls. The hero said that he would come up with a plan of action for them that night. He turned to Clax and said that he wanted to know more about her quick magic. At that moment, a girl from the team ran up to them. She wanted to introduce them to people from the Magic Guild. The boys were surprised. The girl explained that it would be better for them to join as a clan. Clax muttered that it was usually difficult to join a guild. Arad had heard about it too. He asked the girl why she wanted to do it. She said it was because the boy remembered her. The adventurer was flattered, because it was rare for people to remember someone they had only seen once. The hero was a little surprised by this reason. Arad didn't think it was such a big deal. The girl didn't agree with that. She gave an example of a passerby he had seen a couple of times. The adventurer said that usually such people are not remembered, because you do not meet them later. However, the boy did not think so. Instead of continuing this conversation, he asked what his team thought about the guild. To Arya, the news sounded wonderful. She turned to Clax and asked if she thought the same. The girl nodded. Having received the opinion of his clan, Arad told the adventurer that they were counting on her. She said she would ask her friends from the guild and then find the guys. Arad thanked her. The girl asked if she could contact him through him, and then the boy gave his name for further communication. As they parted, the adventurers shouted that they had a good clan. Arya agreed with this. The heroes continued their journey back to the city, home to Arad, where they spent the night. The next morning came. Waking up, the hero stretched and yawned widely. Light was shining into his room. He came down from the attic and was met by Clax downstairs. The girl wished good morning to the gentleman, and he asked how she was feeling. The sad girl answered that she was already fine. The girl thanked the hero for calling and staying in his room. The boy didn't care much. He added that they never had guests anyway, so there were no guest rooms. Arad noticed that Clax had a bowl of water in her hands and asked if Arya was awake yet. She replied that little miss had just gotten up. He went into the girl's room and greeted her, but his still sleepy friend didn't answer him. The maid hurried to her mistress. She placed a bowl of water on the table and took a comb out of her suitcase. The boy noticed that Arya was still half asleep. Meanwhile, Clax began to comb and braid the little miss's hair. Arad said he would go down to the family. He ended by adding that they would be waiting for Arya too. Clax cheerfully said she would prepare the mistress. The boy went downstairs and entered the kitchen, where his father was already sitting at the table and his mother was preparing breakfast. He noticed that his youngest son had already woken up. Not noticing Miss Arya, Ryan asked where she was. The boy replied that Clax was collecting her. The father reminded that the daughter of the Lewis family was their guest and that Arad was responsible for her. The boy froze and said he understood. Noticing that his son was lost in thought, Ryan asked what was wrong. Arad noted that even though his father knew who Arya was, he was acting like he usually did, unlike Robin. The hero remembered how, at his first meeting with Luis's daughter, Robin complimented Arya on her dress and wealth. His memories were interrupted by his father's voice. He wanted his youngest to remember something. The man reminded that an aristocrat must be able to behave according to the situation. They need to live up to their name. Ryan added that despite the fact that their branch was a side branch, they should not be modest about their position all the time. Arad began to understand. In the main house, his family were guests, but here they were the hosts, so the attitude was different. For the hero, this seemed even more difficult than business etiquette. At that moment, a dressed Robin entered the kitchens and asked if Arya had not yet come down. The elder sat down at the table and asked his mother what they would have for breakfast, and if they would not be ashamed in front of the girl from the Louis family. After a while, Arya herself came down to them. She greeted everyone in the proper manner, and the morning in Arad's house began. After breakfast, the boys took a basket of food with them and went to the field. On the way, Arad asked if the girls had a hard time sleeping on their beds. They replied that they smelled of him. Arya added that it smelled like the lawn at her house. Having learned that he sometimes smelled like grass, the hero suggested taking a walk before going hunting. The girls were not against it. Stopping near one of the trees, near which the fragment was glowing, the boy noticed that the road in this place was washed away. Not finding anything, Arad said that they could go further, after which he heard a strange sound and saw that a rabbit was caught in the cage. Noticing the trap, Arya asked if this was also the hero's magic. He answered positively. The girl also asked if this was the same thing he did yesterday. He nodded. The boy explained that he used the same magic as in training. Arya asked if his training was hunting rabbits. Arad answered positively. While they were talking, the rabbit ran as far as it could in the cage and rammed the wall of the cage. Having broken it, it rushed away from the place of the trap. The boy wanted to stop it, but he understood that nothing would come of it. Arad sighed wearily, because he thought everything had worked out. The boy muttered that he wanted to take the animal alive, to which Arya exclaimed in surprise. The hero explained that the price for a live one would be different at the butcher. Arad said that he used to kill hares with an ice spear and thought that he could take them alive with an ice cage, but the cage broke. The boy realized that such magic was not suitable for use in the warm season. And even though he had trained himself to control the ice rock back then, the technique would be pointless if there was nowhere to use it. Clax said that on the other hand, it was great that Arad had thought of it at all. He thanked her for the praise. The boy knew that he had to answer accordingly, both in magic and in the bodies of the aristocracy. Arya called her friend and asked if any magic could be delayed. The hero assumed that it was possible, because it worked with the fireball. After hearing the answer, the girl asked her to teach her how to do it. The boy asked if she wanted it right now. Arya turned to Clax and asked if she would be okay with changing their plans a little. The girl said she was totally fine with it. The boys went out to an open field, where Arya could begin training calmly and freely under Arad's supervision. She tried again and again. Fragments of magic flew around them. After a while, the hero began to doze off and was awakened by Arya's voice. He apologized for almost falling asleep. The girl took it normally. She called the boy to dine on what she had prepared in Clax's basket. The maid was already sitting on a blanket spread out on the field. The boy began to approach her with a smile, eager to taste the girl's food. As soon as the hero wanted to come up and ask what Clax had prepared, he felt the deferred magic begin to penetrate him. He was surprised that Arya was already succeeding. The girl said that he was a good teacher, and the boy in turn remembered his own. Arad noticed that Arya was able to make a delayed magic and a mana healer. The girl thanked her friend for teaching her. The boy replied that there was nothing wrong with that, and then stopped. He suddenly felt something. Arya asked if something had happened, to which the boy did not answer, but only waved her off. Arad looked closely at the field where the girl was training, but he did not see a single fragment that should have remained after the use of magic. The hero thought about it. Although the boy didn't know it, he was right. The fragments were indeed there, but they were carried away by an invisible beast that left paw prints on the soft ground. After dinner, everyone thanked for the delicious food. Arad said that he would remember the moment with magic anyway. Clax immediately beamed and said that it was all thanks to Arya. She became embarrassed and began to say that she did nothing wrong. The girl stood up and said that she could do something else. Arya created a mana healer and showed how it followed her. The boy was extremely surprised to see this. Arya said that it was Clax who suggested she try this with magic. The girl had no idea how she could help little miss. Then Louis's daughter explained that she got the idea when she saw her picnic basket. Arad was thinking meanwhile. He understood in delayed magic that activation and effect happen simultaneously and according to a certain timing. However, the hero noticed that everything works differently for Arya. She launches magic, and only delays its effect. The girl controlled the separation of magic activation and mana restoration. Arad understood that his friend was on another level. Seeing that her friend was deep in thought, Arya called him. The boy asked the girl how much longer she could keep the mana healer near her. The friend answered that she could do it for as long as it took. The girl added that the magic was in this state all the time until she touched it herself. It was difficult for Arya to explain everything in words. The boy would understand better if he felt it himself. Arya added that she only succeeded with the mana healer, but not with the fireball and the bird. Suddenly, an idea struck Arad. He said that this was because her family owned the mana healer, so she could control it more. Clax didn't know that ancient magic was part of the Louis family. The boy began to question the girl further about her skills. At the end of their conversation, Arad realized that mana healer was not just a delayed magic, it could be activated, and the effect remains delayed. And until it is used, mana will not be spent. The boy compared it to a mobile charger. In addition, he can become invisible at will without using any magic. Watching Arya do this, Arad realized that only she could do this. The maid and the hero tried to touch the mana healer created by Arya, but they couldn't. They saw it, but they couldn't touch it, while the mist could do it without any problem. This meant that Arya could only launch it by her own will. The girl asked if he wanted to know anything else. The boy said that she had answered everything he wanted to ask. Now he just had to put it all together in his head. The fact that the Count's daughter could use the lost ancient magic sounded like one of the cheats of a manga or light novel to Arad. The hero understood that he was the reincarnated one who saw fragments of comics in his current magical world. Noticing the strange expression on his face, Arya asked if something was wrong. The boy was surprised that the girls did not realize how cool the magic of the daughter of Luis's family was. However, they did not understand what he meant. The boy reminded that if you don't overdo it, your mana usually regenerates to its maximum every day. Clax repeated after him with a tremor in her voice. She took it personally and apologized. The boy immediately apologized and explained that he was not blaming Clax for what had happened recently. That was not what he had meant at all. Arad continued speaking. He said that if Arya did not use magic for a day and stored her mana outside, then the next day she would be able to use twice as much mana. After that, the friends began to understand Arya's advantageous position. The girl began to reason that if she uses magic on the second day, there will be even more mana, on the third day, even more, and so on, endlessly. She said that if you don't use magic for days, you'll have many times more mana. The boy said that's what he meant. He added that even though there aren't many days without magic, using only half of your mana, you can put the rest aside. The girl agreed with this. Clax also saw logic and sense in this. Arya said that this way there would be a lot of mana left in the conservation. Arad added that when the girl of Armenia had it all, she would be able to withstand any major mage. Somewhere in the future, with such magic, Arya would have become a professional mage, wearing the badge of her first clan on her clothes. The boys went further into the forest. Arad warned the team that they would not go too far this time. The ball of magic followed the girls. Clax exclaimed that it was acting difficult to live. Watching them, the boy realized that he couldn't do it. Behind his back, he tried to try the same thing that Arya did with the mana healer. However, if he controlled him more than necessary, then nothing worked. The hero thought that mana healer, which restores mana, was a rare ancient magic, but in the end, he was completely wrong. Ancient magic was completely different from any other ordinary magic. It is available only to selected mages. Such mages are those who inherited it through bloodline. It was the heirs who could truly use it. Suddenly, something caught Arad's attention. He asked the girls to stop and Clax to use her quick magic, which she did, walking up to the tree. After using his magic, the broken tree stump began to move and move with the help of its roots. It was a monster. The boy couldn't remember its name when Clax shouted it. It was Trent. He was completely alone, which was strange for his species. Arad told Arya to act the same way as yesterday in training. The girl agreed. The boy used an ice wall that grew in front of them, covering the enemy. Trent began to cut through the ice with his roots while Arya prepared her fire magic. She launched a bird from the sky straight at the monster. The tree started to burn. The smoke covered it completely. Everything was going according to plan. Arya was already starting to be happy that they had succeeded, but Arad said that it was not over yet. They noticed that although the monster was burning, it was moving. The boy noted that this Trent was stronger than the usual monster. Arad said that he would distract him while Arya tried again. The hero realized that the monster reacted to movement, so instead of building a wall, he used ice bait. Ice statues the size of a man grew around Trent. He began to destroy them with his long roots. Meanwhile, Arya used her fire magic again, and this attack finished off the enemy. All that was left was a crystal. Clax asked if the boys were hurt. They said they were fine and thanked her for her concern. The maids sighed in relief. After the battle, there were some statues left behind that Arad had created. Arya noticed them, and the boy explained that Trent had reacted to movement, so he had made a decoy out of an ice rock. The girl said that it looked like a piece of art. The hero added that thanks to Clax, he was able to make ice statues. The girl didn't see anything special in it, saying that she simply used a spell at the right time. The boy compared her skills to cooking to explain how important she was to their team. He said that if you don't do everything in time, you can spoil the food. This worked with magic too. Arad added that Count Burton himself says that it is quite difficult to organize magic. Arya also praised Clax, saying that she was able to create a firebird precisely because of her skills in quick magic. The girl was pleased to be useful to the guys and thanked them for their kind words. Suddenly, their familiar adventurer appeared in front of them. He was glad to see the guys safe and sound. The guy told them to quickly leave the forest. Arad didn't understand what was happening. Then he was told that someone unknown and invisible was attacking them from the shadows.